Welcome to Sleep Crime Stories. I know you're here to fall asleep. But before we begin, where are you watching from, and what time is it? Also, do you like the anime-style visuals, or should I go more serious? Let's begin. The first time I set foot on the gravel drive at 413 Elm Street, the radio crackled with that familiar mix of static and urgency that every midnight shift teaches you to dread. I could feel the cold seeping through the seams of my uniform, numbness creeping into my fingertips as I unhooked my belt mic and clipped it to my shoulder. Clearbrook Dispatch, Unit 9-1, we're at the address, I murmured, voice low. Steady, just like we train. The response came back clipped. Copy, 9-1. Suspected disturbance. No shots fired. Backup is tied up in Rogers County. Use caution. I slid off the cruiser's seat and stepped into a world that felt suspended between reality and nightmare. The street lamps cast pale halos across frost-dusted lawns. The air was so silent that every breath sounded like a thunderclap in my ears. I'm Officer Jasmine Hayes, 10 years on the force, and I've learned that the deeper the quiet, the closer the danger. Mike Ramirez, my partner, shut off the engine behind me. His silhouette flickered in the glass as he leaned over the console. Lights low, Jace, he said, ears open. I nodded, tapping my flashlight against my palm. We edged around the front porch, guns holstered, eyes peeled. The front yard was empty, the windows dark. No flicker of television glow, no frantic silhouettes pressed against curtains. We moved around to the back, soft footsteps on damp gravel, ears straining for even the faintest hint of life. Through the crack in the shades I thought I saw movement, a shadow shifting closer to the glass. Mike caught it too. I saw that. He hissed. I raised the mic, whisper talking. Dispatch, we have possible visual of subject in back. Over. Static. No reassurance that help was coming. I approached the sliding glass door, chest tight, adrenaline jerking at my pulse. A stray moonbeam cut across a pair of heavy boots, big, like his radio said, far bigger than mine. Darren Thompson, the call ID warned. Known violent domestic, 7-foot frame, 400 pounds. My heart thumped against my rib cage, but I swallowed hard and swung the door handle. It clicked, locked. I signaled Mike. He took point, grabbing the edge of the door and prying it open just enough to slip through. I followed, flashlight low, beam slicing through murk. Inside, the kitchen light had been left on, casting long shadows across overturned chairs and splattered stains on the vinyl floor. The odor hit me then, coppery, sharp, blood, fresh. I choked back bile, shining the beam toward a fallen wooden chair. Its backrest lay cracked, splinters jutting toward the ceiling. Floor tiles were smeared dark. Somewhere in my gut I knew it wasn't just a scuffle. This was bad. My radio spat another burst of static. Dispatch, 9-1. We're in the residence. Confirming injuries. Over. Silence. Even dispatch had seemed to vanish. My breath fogged in the beam as I crouched to examine blood droplets leading through the doorway. I motioned Mike forward. He crept along the trail, boots careful, until the hallway plunged him into shadow. I hovered beside him, hands hovering near my holster. Then a guttural sound, half growl, half groan, ripped through the stillness. I snapped my light up. At the end of the hall, under a flickering bulb, crouched a giant figure. The shovel lay on the floor beside him. One side of his face drooped unnaturally, mouth askew. His right eye glinted with something feral. My breath hitched. Mike tensed like a coiled spring. Darren, I said quietly, but firm. Police. Show your hands. The reek of iron clung to the air as he shifted, standing. He towered over us, broad shoulders, massive arms scarred and veiny. Get out, he rasped, voice raw with pain. "Get out!" The shovel hissed across the linoleum as he snatched it up. My instinct screamed taser, but the angle was wrong. Too close to walls, too little space for safe deployment. My second thought was backup, but backup wasn't coming. Third thought, run. I dove sideways as he swung the shovel, the blade carving a groove into the door frame. Splintered wood showered my partner's face. He took a step back, face streaked with sweat and panic. "Cover the exit," I barked, sprinting toward the kitchen window. Mike staggered back toward me, mind racing. Darren advanced like a rampaging bull, each footfall rattling the tile. I yanked the window open and felt the sting of glass chips. With a shove, Mike tumbled through, scraping his elbow. I followed, shoulder first, hearing Darren crash after us. We stumbled into the backyard, moonlight stark and cold. Gravel scraped under my boots as I ran for the fence. Mike's panting was loud in my ear. We vaulted over the wooden slats, jagged edges snagging our uniforms, while Darren roared behind us. He leapt, arms outstretched, his shovel slicing through empty air as we dropped to the grass. I hit the ground hard, rifle butt sting across my ribs. Mike went down, rolling, coming up on one knee. Darren smashed the shovel's handle into the grass and reached for his face, eyes watering. Mike raised his OC spray and fired a narrow stream. Darren staggered, dropping the shovel. His jaw hung slack, spittle flying. He collapsed onto the dew-wet grass, body convulsing. We cuffed him quickly as his breathing shook the night. Mike knelt beside him, voice calm. "Darren, you're safe. We're here to help." His rugged face contorted with confusion and pain. I radioed dispatch. "We have subject detained, serious face trauma, EMS required, over." The answer dripped through the static. "Copy. Ambulance en route." His wife burst through the side gate, frantic, clutching their boy at her side. The kid's eyes were wide, shimmering with tears. He snapped," she sobbed. "He tried to make our son drink liquor, said it'd make him a man. I grabbed a trowel, and he attacked me." She trembled, thrusting her phone at me. I glanced down, photos of a broken jaw, dark bruises, nightmare logic. While we waited for EMS, I kept my flashlight trained on Darren. His breath came ragged, blood draining down his chin. He wiped at his eyes. "Sorry," he whispered, voice thick. I don't know why." My partner gave me a look. "Something's off," he said quietly. At the hospital, Darren was wheeled away for x-rays. I hovered in the hallway, partner by my side. The doctor emerged minutes later, face grave. "We found more than a fracture," she said. "There's a mass pressing on his frontal lobe. Without surgery, he won't make it. A brain tumor, silent, growing, warping his behavior until he wasn't himself. We never booked him. His attorney argued mitigating medical emergency, and the county dismissed charges." Darren walked out weeks later, scarred but alive. His wife held him, and for a moment I envied their reunion. But as I drove home that night, headlights slicing the empty road, I passed 413 Elm again. The driveway was dark, silent, too silent, and in the corner of my vision I thought I saw footprints, fresh tracks leading to the bins. My pulse picked up. I switched on the siren for a second. No answer. Backup arrived moments later, lights flaring. I climbed out, breathing hard, and shone my light back at the bins. Nothing there but shadows. Yet I felt eyes on me through the trees, and the wind carried a soft scraping sound, like metal against wood. I radioed in. "Dispatch, stand by for a possible second subject, over." No confirmation came. In that haunted silence, I understood. Some encounters don't end just because we cuff the suspect. Midnight has its own secrets, and not every threat wears a face we recognize. Backup cruisers swept into the driveway half a minute later, blue and red strobes painting the yard in frantic, oscillating light. Sergeant Daniels climbed over the fence, boots crunching gravel, and barked orders. "Secure the scene. EMS into the house. Hayes, Ramirez, get me a full statement and clear perimeter for any secondary threats." I nodded, heart pounding so hard I thought the sergeant might hear it through his radio. Mike slipped beside me, still shaking, and between breaths whispered, "Jace, you okay?" I forced a nod, but inside, I felt that same tingle of dread, like something we hadn't seen yet was crouched just out of sight. We ushered Darren's wife and son inside, wrapped them in blankets from the cruiser, and sat them on the front porch. Their faces were pale, eyes hollow from the shock, the boy's small frame rattled by silent sobs. I took the wife's statement in clipped phrases, trying to stay professional but feeling tears burn my eyes. She spoke of normal family life until that night, a spat over money, a misplaced promise to quit drinking, then a rage so sudden he'd been bent on hurting anyone in his path. I noted every detail, her tone, the way she pressed her hands together, the uneven rhythm of her breathing. Everything she said fit the picture of a man snapped by madness, but the tumor discovery still haunted me like a half-remembered dream I couldn't shake. Inside the house, EMS teams buzzed around Darren, prepping him for transport to neurosurgery at St. Luke's. I trailed behind them, clipboard in hand, documenting his vitals, the sequence of restraint, noting how his eyes would flutter closed when paramedics touched his cheek. The surgeon's assistant pulled me aside. "You should talk to his neurosurgeon. Brain lesions like this can distort behavior. He likely thought his wife was an intruder again." I swallowed, nodded. "Understood," I said, though the weight in my chest felt like I was swallowing lead. By the time we cleared the scene, evidence bag sealed, perimeter log signed, bloody chair seat taped for transport, I realized it was close to dawn. The sky had started to blush pale pink. I looked at Mike, exhaustion lining his face. "Let's get back to the station. Process reports, wrap this up." He managed a tired half-smile. "Yeah, feels like we've been here a lifetime." At the station, I sat in the interview room and replayed the night in my head. The creak of the door frame, the flash of metal, the primal roar of a man fueled by pain and disease. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I typed my report, each word a heavy stone. I paused, stared at the blank line where I'd described the final choke of the shovel against the floor. How to capture that surge of fear. How to explain the relief and the guilt that followed. I wrote, erased, rewrote. At 6:15 a.m. I hit submit and sent the report to the sergeant's inbox. My phone buzzed. A text from dispatch. Case number 24-193 closed. "Good job. Get some rest." I stared at it, thumb hovering over the reply field, then turned it off. Sleep didn't come. Instead, I drove home through streets waking to the new day. The sun rose in pale streaks, but the ache in my chest wouldn't let go. I showered, tried to scrub away the sweat and the memory of blood against my skin, but it stuck to me like varnish. Coffee did little to settle my nerves. I sat at my desk, wearing my uniform still, and stared out the window. A squad car rolled by beneath the elm tree, its radio chatter a jumbled comfort. Routine calls, traffic accidents, noise complaints. Life carried on, but I felt suspended, caught between the world's normalcy and that brutal backyard showdown. By mid-afternoon, I decided to take the detective's exam, something I'd postponed for years. Maybe a change of role would distance me from nights like this. But as I filled out the application, the thought of being behind a desk, removed from the raw immediacy of patrol, filled me with dread. Who would face down the darkness if not me and my partners? I closed the application file and slid it under my keyboard. "Not yet," I whispered. The night had taught me that evil doesn't wait. I tried to shake it off, but at 3 p.m. I nearly jumped out of my skin when my phone rang. On the caller ID, Clearbrook Dispatch. I lifted to my ear. "Dispatch, Hayes here." The dispatcher's voice was jittery. "Unit 9-1? We have. You might want to take this." Another caller at 413 Elm says they see a figure in their backyard, dragging something behind the bins. My stomach nodded. "You've got to be kidding." Mike appeared at my doorframe. "Everything all right?" I tapped my pocket. "New call, same place. Tonight at 3 p.m. someone just reported movement." His eyes widened. "You serious?" I exhaled slowly. "Yeah." I grabbed my jacket, stuffed pens into my pocket, and headed out. "Let's get back on the road." The drive back felt wrong. Asphalt shimmering in the afternoon heat, neighbor kids riding bikes, unaware of the undercurrent of dread I carried. We parked down the street, engines off, and crept toward the yard with sirens silent. I kept the mic open, half listening for the dispatcher to breathe on the end of the line. The gate swung slightly with a rusty squeal, which sounded outlandish. How often do gates squeak in summer? But the sound echoed in my mind. I scanned the perimeter with the flashlight we'd carried from the station for emergencies. Near the bins, I saw it, a dark smear along the concrete slab. My light revealed dark red stains, dried but still vivid. Below them, footprints, huge and mismatched, the treads not like Darren's boots. I knelt close, careful not to step in the stains, and studied the prints. They led around the corner of the house, toward the side yard we hadn't searched in the chaos of that night. Mike crouched beside me, breath shallow. "Darren's out of surgery, under ICU observation. He can't be here." I bit back a retort. "I know." My voice trembled just barely. "But someone is." We moved together, flashlights slicing into the shadowed eaves. At the corner, the air grew colder. My breath fogged in front of me, even though the sun was high. I thought I heard the faintest scrape, like something dragging claws across wood. I froze. Mike stopped dead. The scrape came again, closer. My hand brushed my holster but didn't draw. What was I going to do, shoot at a sound? The scrape veered away, like it had circled behind us. I spun, light sweeping the yard, but found nothing. Just overgrown hedges, a sagging fence, the afternoon sun glaring off the roof. A tapping noise on the back door echoed in the hollow quiet. We approached slowly, senses on edge. I placed my gloved hand on the handle, warm, not cold, then turned my head. For a heartbeat, I thought I saw Darren's twisted grin at the frosted glass. But when I flicked the light, the hallway was empty. I yanked the door open. The latch clicked freely, unlocked. Something tugged at my gut. I searched the entryway. A single gardening trowel lay on the floor, blade dull but smeared with soil, not blood. My pulse thundered. Mike whispered, "Who the hell?" We radioed in. "Dispatch, suspicious entry at 413 Elm. Possible second intruder, need K9 unit." The dispatcher's voice rushed back. "Copy that." I shone the light onto the trowel's handle. Grainy wood, splintered at the grip. It reminded me of the night Darren's wife had defended their child. Then I noticed scrawled words on the blade, faint, as though etched with a pocket knife. "Leave." My breath hitched. In that moment I felt eyes on me, from inside the house, through windows, from the dark corners beyond the fence. The afternoon glare felt oppressive, as though I'd stepped into a hall of mirrors where every surface reflected a broken face. I knew I should retreat, wait for backup, door breach with a team. But a deeper part of me, the part that had signed up for this life, took a step forward. "We're not done here," I said, voice low. Mike's gaze locked onto mine. He nodded. "Let's call it in, get the dogs, and sweep the house proper." We backed out, radioed for the K9 unit and a tactical team, and waited. Sunlight stretched long shadows across the grass, and as I stood there, ears ringing, I heard something over my open mic. Just for a second, at the edge of static, a low, rasping whisper. It sounded like someone saying my name. "Hayes. Hayes." I froze, chest tightening. Mike glanced at me, concern etched on his face. I didn't respond, because in that moment I realized this midnight encounter wasn't over, and it might never be safe again. When the dogs arrive, we'll see what's behind that door. But I know one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever it is, it hasn't left 413 Elm for good. By the time the K9 unit finally swept into the yard, the sun had dipped below the horizon and the street lamps blinked on, transforming the quiet afternoon into something closer to midnight again. The two German shepherds, Echo and Bravo, strained at their leads, nostrils flaring, paws scraping on the concrete. Their handlers knelt at the gate, clipped leashes to their collars and whispered commands. "Search!" Instantly, the dogs surged forward, heads low, noses tracing unseen trails. I followed close behind, hand on my holster, though the shoveled tumor case on Darren had left me wary of firing unless absolutely necessary. The tactical team gathered at the front porch, ballistic shields raised, rifles slung but ready. Mike stayed beside me, flashlight off to preserve our night vision. His breath came in shallow bursts. Echo led us along the side yard where I'd found those fresh footprints earlier. The dog's tail wagged stiffly, then stilled as she swung wide toward the back fence. Bravo veered toward the side door, nose pressed to the jamb, paws skidding on chipped paint. He let out a single, low bark. The handler whispered, "Door." We converged on the door. A solid oak frame with a single frosted glass pane half lifted. I signaled the breach team. Point man, shield, stack up. No siren, no fanfare. Just that muted scrape of boot on grass and the low hum of shared tension. The shield operator pressed it forward. I followed. Mike keyed. "Entry team here, go loud on 3. The sergeant's silhouette behind us counted down. 3, 2, 1, breach. The doors swung open under the shield's momentum. We flooded inside in a crouch. My light swept the hallway, drywall scarred by scuff marks, droplets of mud trailing to the stairwell. A child's toy, an abandoned plush fox, lay in the dust. I paused, thinking of Darren's boy wrapped in blankets earlier. Why was this here in the darkness? No answers. Just another wrinkle in the nightmare. We cleared room after room. The living room still held overturned furniture, but no one. In the kitchen, the blood-spattered vinyl was cleaned, scrubbed nearly spotless. Too spotless. Someone had wiped away every last smear. My stomach nodded. This wasn't just a break-in. It was someone, something, covering tracks. I moved past the kitchen into the hallway leading upstairs. Bravo's leash tightened. He whined, hackles raised. The handler aimed a flashlight up the stairs, a single footprint on the second step, muddy and deep. I crouched, brushing dust aside. The tread wasn't Darren's. It was too narrow. A woman's boot, maybe, by the heel shape. Who else had been here? At the top landing, the hallway stretched both directions. Doors on either side, one to a bedroom, one to a bathroom. I froze as Echo barked twice from the bathroom door. The handler eased it open. Inside was a small room painted pale blue, with a single bed pushed against the wall. The mattress was gone, leaving only the metal springs and box frame. A single lamp lay shattered on the floor, glass shards glittering like ice. Before I could react, a soft thump echoed from down the hall. I looked toward the other bedroom door. It rattled slightly, as though someone had leaned against it too hard. I raised my flashlight, took a breath, and kicked it open. Inside was an angular room cluttered with children's drawings pinned to the walls. Stick figures with crossed-out faces, houses burning under blood-red suns, and, in one corner, a crude portrait of a man with a shattered jaw, rendered in charcoal. Beneath it, scrawled in shaky letters, "They took him away." My heart slammed. Who they? And why draw Darren's face? Mike nudged me. "Jace." His voice was a whisper, but carried a tremor I recognized. I tore my gaze from the drawings and scanned the room. An empty dresser drawer left open, clothes strewn on the floor, a child's raincoat draped over a chair. The coat hood had a smear of mud, and something darker at the hem. I crouched, shining light on a smear too deep to be mud. I swallowed, stomach twisting. It was red. My radio crackled. "Sergeant Daniels to entry team, status." His voice came from somewhere behind me, steady but laced with tension. I keyed my mic. Clear, no sign of subject. But we've found evidence of cover-up and possible third-party involvement. Child's room vandalized, no mattress, drawings referencing they. Over. Static then. Copy. Hold position. Canine sweep continues. I lowered the mic. Mike exhaled. "Geez." He ran a hand through his hair. I studied his face in the beam, eyes wide, mouth set. "Something's moving in here," I said. "And it isn't Darren." We backed out into the hallway as the dogs continued barking behind doors. We waited near the top of the stairs, rifles raised, flashlights pointing down the dark corridor. The floorboards moaned under boots. Echo trotted past, head down, then bolted back, barking at something in the master bedroom. We trailed her, kicking open the door. Master bedroom was huge. King-size bed, leather headboard, large walk-in closet. The bed was made. Crisp sheets tucked tight. No sign of struggle. But the mirror above the dresser was cracked diagonally, like a lightning bolt. The glass spider-webbed across the reflective surface. My own face stared back, broken. I stepped closer. Fingerprints smudged the frame, glistening with sweat, and dried in streaks. Someone had stood there, breathing on the glass. But why? I scanned the closet, doors ajar, clothes hanging haphazardly. Then I heard it, a soft metallic click. I spun. The closet rod shifted, and a wooden door panel behind the clothes swung inward, revealing a narrow crawl space. A low shelf held a lantern, one of those old rusted kerosene lamps. Beneath it, a single photograph lay face up on the floor. Darren's wife, smiling in daylight, son behind her, arm around their son. It was cut halfway, as though someone had sliced the bottom off. I picked it up, careful not to disturb any prints. The back had nothing written, no date, no note. Just a blank white space that felt more ominous than any threat. Before I could tuck it away, a sudden hush fell over the room. The dogs outside went silent too. I felt it, the air thickening, pressing against my lungs. My flashlight flickered. I checked my battery, full. Yet the beam dimmed, pulsed. The hairs on my neck prickled. Something moved behind me, just outside the doorframe, my hand tensed on the pistol grip. "Who's there?" I called, voice echoing. No answer. But from the crawl space came a faint whisper. One word, jagged and soft. "Hayes." I turned to Mike, but he was already ducking behind the bed. I dove for cover behind the dresser. The pistol muzzle jerked in my hand as I raised it. The closet door creaked open wider, revealing inky darkness. The lantern sat on its shelf, flickering though it was unlit. The whisper came again, closer. "Hayes, you shouldn't be here." My heart surged. I radioed the sergeant. "We have a potential intruder in C-section. I need support now." The radio crackled. "Copy." ETA, 2 minutes. 2 minutes felt like an eternity. I edged forward, pistol extended at eye level, beam cutting into the crawl space. My boots thudded softly on carpet, each footstep amplified in my mind. I glanced at Mike. His eyes met mine, wide in the dim light. He swallowed. Then movement. A pale hand snaked out from the darkness, fingers curling around the lantern's handle. I fired, once. The shot tore through the room. The lantern shattered, flames flickering as the fuel ignited. The fire spread in a crescent, cooling on the shelf. The crawlspace door slammed shut, knocking me back against the dresser. My ear rang. I scrambled to my feet and raced to the closet, kicked the door open. Ash and smoke billowed around me, stinging my eyes. I coughed, wiping tears as I peered inside. No one, just scorched wood and a trickle of kerosene. But pressed into the wall where the lantern had been was a handprint, smudged, ghostly white against the charred wood. And above it, scratched into the plaster, was something sharp. "You can't hide." I sprinted back into the hallway where Mike was coughing, pressing a wet towel to his face. The fire alarm screamed in the distance, somewhere else in the house. I pressed my back against the wall, panting. Sirens wailed outside. Tactical reinforcements. Engine noise, barking dogs surging through the rooms below. "They're here," I gasped. "We need to get out." Mike nodded, voice raspy. "Let's go." We dashed down the stairs, clogging in the chute of smoke. Flames leapt through vents. We burst into the living room just as Bravo charged past, barking. The tactical team flanked us. Sergeant Daniels grabbed my arm. "Hayes, you all right?" His eyes flicked to the scorch marks on the door frames. "What the hell happened?" I swallowed, pointing at the charred closet. "Someone lured us here, set a trap, left a message." I pressed a gloved finger to the wall smear. "And they know my name." He glanced at my badge. "We're pulling back. Everybody out." The dogs barked. Lead lines yanked tight. We stumbled into the front yard, coughing in the cool night air, the house behind us glowing with firelight. Neighbors gathered at a safe distance, their faces pale in strobe-lit anxiety. One woman held her phone out, recording. Another sobbed into her husband's shoulder. The sergeant called in the fire department and ordered a perimeter. Mike slid next to me. "Jace, you see that?" I looked to the side and froze. Imprinted in the damp earth at the edge of the yard were 2 sets of footprints. The dog's paw marks, and beside them, a single human footprint leading away from the house into the neighbor's property. It was bare, just the outline of a boot sole. Not Darren's, not ours. I felt the weight of every shift I'd ever done settle heavy in my chest. The dispatchers, the calls, the adrenaline, the fear, all leading to this. Darren's rage and the tumor had been only the beginning. Someone else had been living here, watching, waiting. After we'd cuffed him in that dark backyard, the fire crackled behind me, the flames eating into plaster and wood. I looked at the footprints leading away and realized no one is safe. Not in Clearbrook, not at midnight, not ever. I raised my mic. "Dispatch, we have a new suspect. One, unidentified, last seen heading east from 413 Elm. Proceed with caution. Over." I closed my eyes as the acrid smoke stung my throat. The whisper still echoed in my mind. "Hayes, you shouldn't be here." The night air tasted of smoke and fear as we stood in the driveway, the charred shell of 413 Elm glowing behind us like a dying ember. Firefighters doused the last pockets of flame, while paramedics tended to the tactical medic's twisted ankle and checked our vitals. Sergeant Daniels barked orders to secure the perimeter and collect statements, but his eyes betrayed the same unease I felt. This was no ordinary break-in. Mike and I were herded toward the patrol SUVs, blankets draped over our shoulders to ward off the chill. The K-9 unit huddled nearby, Echo and Bravo panting, paws muddy from the crawl space. I nudged their handler. "Anything on the dogs?" He shook his head. Alerted to a live subject, but lost the scent upstairs, then zeroed on the backyard like whoever breached circled out. My gut clenched as I thought of that lone footprint. Narrow heel, deep tread, as though someone wanted us to see it, but never to follow too far. We gave our statements under harsh floodlights. Neighbors peered from behind yellow tape, cell phones raised. One hushed voice murmured, "Those poor cops." Another whispered, "What kind of monster?" I caught a glimpse of the boy from next door, eyes wide, clutching his mother's skirt. I swallowed, forcing my face to remain impassive even as my hands shook. At the station, the walls felt too bright, too sterile. Desks under fluorescent bulbs, the hum of computers, the rustle of paper. Each sound a reminder of normality from which I felt forever estranged. I stripped off my gear and hung my uniform on a rack, staring at the bloodstains and singed fabric long after I'd left the scene. The locker room mirror reflected a pale, wide-eyed version of myself. Dark circles under cheeks, flushed with chilling adrenaline. Mike joined me at the briefing room table, 2 styrofoam cups of coffee between us. He stirred his sugar with a trembling finger. "Chase, that footprint, have you run it through the system?" I shook my head. Too small for Darren, too narrow, and there's only one track, like whoever was here wanted to slip away. He drained his coffee. "We need forensics on it, and check the neighbors' cameras." I nodded, rubbing my temples. "I'll get CSI rolling first thing." I retreated to my office, slammed the door, and booted up my laptop. The case folder glared back. 24-193, Thompson/Hayes incident. The first domestic violence call, the discovery of the tumor, our midday re-entry, the crawlspace fire. I clicked New Evidence and typed a note about the footprint, then attached the photos a forensics tech had emailed. A crisp, muddy outline in the damp grass. Shoe size around a men's 6, not registered in any recent missing person reports. I flagged the file for review. My phone buzzed, a text from dispatch. Unit 9-1. Any updates? Beat team on standby. I stared at it, then thumb-typed back. Awaiting CSI, will advise. Then came another buzz. My partner's mother, concerned. "Are you both okay?" "Honey, I saw the news." My chest tightened. I hesitated, then replied, "We're safe. Working late. Love you." The pit in my stomach churned. How was I meant to reassure anyone when I couldn't shake the feeling that something was hunting us? An hour later, I walked to the evidence locker where the footprint mold sat in its plastic tray, moisture still glistening on its edges. A CSI tech, Skinner, veteran and quiet, peered at it under a magnifier. Pattern looks homemade. Outsoles scored manually, maybe on a handheld grinder. Whoever did this crafted those treads themselves. My throat went dry. "Why?" I murmured. Skinner glanced up. "To lead you somewhere. To make you notice that someone else was here, but why draw you back in?" I pressed my hand against the glass case. "Because they want me to come back, to finish something." He nodded, indifferent. "We'll check local cobblers, see if anyone ordered custom soles." I forced a nod, then left, the door's click sounding deafening in the quiet hallway. By midnight, the station was all but empty. I sat at my desk, nursing lukewarm coffee, Reviewing neighbor cam footage, the angle from 415 Elm caught only the edge of Darren's porch light, but at 3 p.m. that day, I saw a dark silhouette slip through the front gate, pausing to glance back before crouching at the kitchen window. The figure stood for a long moment, and then a flash. Light from my own cruiser's spotlight sent it running into the shadowed yard. I replayed it, frame by frame. The lanky shape moved with deliberate calm, not the panicked dash of someone caught unawares. Whoever this was, they knew exactly what they were doing. Mike knocked on my open office door. "You okay?" His voice was low. I pointed at the screen. "Look, this is the same person. They came before we did this afternoon, scouted, then waited for the fire, then watched us flee." His jaw clenched. "They're studying us." I shivered. "And they know our schedules, our tactics." We exchanged a grim look. "We need to trap them," he said. "Set up surveillance, bait them." I pressed my lips together. "Agreed, we'll need a plan." We compiled a quick briefing. "Stake out 413 Elm tonight. Get in cams, motion sensors, maybe a decoy patrol run. We'd tape off the yard more securely this time, leave evidence deliberately exposed." A dropped glove, a half-written note reading, "Why did you leave?" in Darren's handwriting. Then, hide and wait. We presented it to Daniels, who raised one bushy eyebrow. "Risky," he said, "but maybe the only way to flush this out." He tapped his pen. "Get your gear, you two ride shotgun. No backup unless it's urgent, and leave the mic on open channel." By 2 a.m., we were in the unmarked van, parked 3 houses down. I saw the flash of motion sensors glinting in the yard like watchful eyes. My heart pounded as I checked my vest pocket. Extra taser cartridges, handcuffs, a spare mag. Mike loaded the surveillance tablet. "All cams online?" I nodded. "Thermals too." Outside, the wind whispered through bare branches, leaves skittering across the pavement. I exhaled slowly. Half an hour passed in tense silence, our headlights off, just the glow of dash panels. The only sound was the hum of the engine's idling AC. Then, at 2:43 a.m., a red dot, motion alert, flickered on the tablet. In the thermal cam, I saw a shape moving along the fence line. Not a dog, not a cat. 2 legs, slender torso, head bent low. Mike hit record. I leaned forward. "They're here." We slipped out, guns drawn but lights off, crawling on hands and knees to the fence. I peered through a mesh gap. In the yard, the subject stood next to the burned-out crawlspace entry, head cocked, turning slowly as if listening. Its features were obscured by darkness. I couldn't tell male or female, but in its hand glowed a chipped ceramic figurine. Darren's son's toy rabbit, smeared with ashes. My stomach lurched. The intruder had been inside the house again, scavenging keepsakes. A whisper echoed, "Hayes?" I froze. Mike's hand gripped my shoulder. "They know you're here." I nodded, heart slamming. The figure raised the rabbit, holding it out as if offering it to me. I swallowed, raising my taser. "Move in or fall back," Mike murmured. My mind raced. If we charged, we risked a trap. If we waited, they'd vanish again, along with any chance to catch them. Before I could decide, the figure clenched the toy, bringing it crashing down on the ground. Ceramic shattered, ears flying. Then it turned and melted into the shadows of the side yard. Motion sensors flicked off in sequence, plunging me into darkness. I radioed in. Subject sighted at fence, lost visual. Entry point crawlspace. Rabbit figurine recovered, destroyed. I need K9 and entry team now. The radio hissed back. "Copy that." Moving in. I lowered my voice to Mike. "They're getting bolder." He exhaled. "We're closer." Next time we might corner them. I glanced at the scorched crawlspace entrance, ashes curling around its edges like black lace. The memory of the whisper, the rasp of my name in that burning closet, echoed through my skull. We retreated to the van, leaving the team to secure the yard. As we drove away, I saw the shattered figurine on the pavement, rabbit ears half buried in ash and glass. My reflection in the windshield stared back, tired, hollowed, haunted. I pressed my hand to the glass and felt a faint tremor. The station loomed ahead, lights welcoming, but I knew there was no respite. Later, in the quiet of my apartment, I lined up the evidence on my kitchen table. The footprint mold, the mangled rabbit pieces, the photograph slice, the blood-spattered chair seat. Each a totem of that house's horrors. I laid them side by side, tracing connections with a pen. Tumor, rage, breach, fire, footprint, scout, toy, lure. The arrows pointed everywhere and nowhere. Something in me snapped. I threw the pen across the table. It clattered to the floor. My phone buzzed. A new voicemail from dispatch. My heart sank as I pressed play. A distorted voice, low and garbled. Hayes, we're one step ahead. The message ended with a breathy chuckle and a click. Static, then silence. I sat in the dark, the table's evidence illuminated by a single lamp. Questions churned. Who was this watching us? Why target me? What did they want? And most terrifying, how long had they been planning this? As the voicemail's last echo faded, I realized the answer was no longer in the files or the house, but in the darkness between calls, where someone whispered my name as their favorite toy shattered at my feet. I closed my eyes, the words ringing in my mind. Hayes, we're one step ahead. The voicemail's last whisper, Hayes, we're one step ahead, echoed in my skull long after the line went dead. I sat alone in my apartment, the weight of those words pressing into my brain like a vice. Dawn was hours away, and I knew sleep would only leave me vulnerable, unarmed against whatever game this was. I shoved the broken rabbit pieces into an evidence bag and tucked it under my arm. I grabbed my keys, slid into my coat, and left without another thought. The station was a fortress of empty desks and humming computers when I walked in. Mike was already there, slumped in a chair at dispatch, eyes heavy with sleeplessness. I dropped the evidence bag on the table. He looked up, and for a moment I saw shock flicker across his face. "You came in," he said, voice hoarse. "Couldn't stay away." I nodded, pressing my palms into the table. "They called me. Again." He rubbed his eyes. "You got the voicemail?" I pulled out my phone and let him listen. The garbled "one step ahead" lingered between us like a challenge. He swallowed. "We need all hands on deck." By 3 a.m., we'd cobbled together our final plan. A discreet return to poor 13 Elm Street. Not as cops calling the shots, but as bait. We'd leave the broken rabbit and the photograph fragment on the stoop. Something tailor-made to lure whoever haunted that house into showing themselves. Then we'd lie in wait, hidden in the shadows, cameras rolling. If they came, we'd confront them. If they didn't, we'd at least know their methods. We drove out in Mike's unmarked sedan. The world was still, streets empty, the only light the weak glow of street lamps. I watched the glove compartment where I kept my personal handgun, a backup piece I'd stashed months ago in case of rogue calls. Tonight it felt heavier than any department-issued sidearm. My heart thudded, my jaw clenched. Mike glanced at me in the rearview mirror. "Ready?" I swallowed. "Let's end this." The house lay dark, silent, its windows like lifeless eyes. We parked 3 doors down, out of sight, and unloaded gear. 2 handheld cams, a shotgun, extra magazines, surgical gloves, and a slender infrared laser pointer. Our footsteps crunched on gravel as we approached. The broken rabbit lay by the front step, shards of ceramic, spun-off ears, a smear of ash marking its ruin. Beside it, the black and white photo slice, Darren's wife and son, frozen in happier light, half torn, half obliterated. I knelt and whispered, "Here's your bait." Then I slid into the shadows, blinking down the red dot of the laser pointer at the front door's panel. Minutes ticked by. My chest tightened with every exhale. The laser dot beat like a heartbeat, dancing against the warped wood. My eardrums itched, straining for the softest creak, the faintest scrape of foot against porch. Behind me, Mike adjusted his camera, silent as a ghost. An hour passed. The dawn sky remained stubbornly black. My leg began to cramp from crouching. Mike gave me a nudge. Still nothing. I shook my head. They know we're here. I fingered the holster at my side. If they thought we'd come back, they'd have hit us before daylight. Mike frowned. Maybe this is a trick. My teeth ground together. Then we need a new play. I raised my voice into the night. Listen up. Whoever you are, I've got a name. Hayes, let's see how brave you are when I point a barrel at your face. Silence. Then a soft laugh, low and distant, like the churn of wind through hollow bones. The sound came from behind the house. I fired a flare round into the air. The sharp crack, startling, and watched the orange flare arc overhead, illuminating the yard, the fence, the skeletal silhouettes of hedges. The laughter stopped. My pulse roared. I whispered, "They're back there." Mike grabbed my arm. "Hold." A figure emerged from around the side, stepping slowly into the flare's glow. A tall silhouette, slender but broad-shouldered, wearing a hooded raincoat that hung to mid-calf. I could see only shadows of a face, but something in the stance, the tilt of the head, stopped my breath. The figure raised one hand, turning the hood back enough to reveal eyes. Cold, empty, unblinking. No glare of recognition, no flicker of shame. Just a blank canvas where fear should paint itself. I aimed my shotgun. "Drop it," I barked. The figure responded with silence, stepping closer, calm as if walking to an appointment. Mike moved beside me, flashlight on, beam cutting through the darkness. The raincoat glinted with raindrops, though I felt no rain. I felt a prickle on my skin, like static. The air smelled faintly of gasoline and something metallic, like old coins. I took another step forward. The figure didn't flinch. I raised my voice again. "We know you've been here. We have the footprint, the broken toy, the code." I swallowed. "We've got you cornered." The figure cocked its head, watching me. Then, with deliberate slowness, it reached into an inner pocket and drew out a small object. A ceramic shard from the broken rabbit toy. It held it out between two fingers and dropped it at my feet. The shard clinked on the porch. I stared. Mike's hand flicked to his sidearm. "What do you want?" I demanded. The figure raised a gloved hand and traced 3 lines in the wet wood, each line a slash, like tally marks, but the third line carved across the first 2, an X. Then it tapped its chest, pressed 2 fingers to its temple, and pointed at my chest. The gestures were cryptic, almost ritualistic. I felt blood drain from my face. The figure stepped forward, brushing past me without hesitation, heading back into darkness. I called after it, but it vanished like smoke. The raincoat caught on the corner of the porch for a moment, tearing one sleeve, then it slipped away. Mike trained his flashlight along its path, but all we saw was the flashing red of my abandoned laser pointer, blinking in a random pattern, once, twice, then fading. I dropped to my knees to pick up the shard. On its underside, scrawled in what looked like dried blood, were 4 letters. Next. My gut seized. The tally on the porch meant this was the 3rd time I'd been targeted. The initial backyard apparition, the crawlspace whisper, the test at 3 p.m., and now this. A final invitation. Next. I stood, pocketing the shard. Mike looked at me, face pale. "What now?" he whispered. I swallowed. "We wait," I said, voice brittle. "We wait until dawn, and then we go inside, together." We retraced our steps back to the car, stumbling over wet grass and discarded evidence markers. Every so often, the laser dot flickered back to life on the porch, a heartbeat pulsing in the dark. At the sedan, I paused and looked back at the house. Dark windows like empty sockets, the front door stained with ash and the single X. It looked abandoned, but I knew it wasn't. We drove away in silence, passing under the green glow of traffic lights, heading for the station. My mind raced with possibilities. A twisted neighbor psychotic with grief, a child acting out revenge, the son emboldened by anger, the wife resentful of the system, but none felt right. Whoever it was, they knew my moves, my fears, my name. They were playing a game with rules only they understood. At the station, I filed the new evidence, photos of the tally on the porch, the shard reading next, the CCTV clip of the figure stepping from shadow to shadow. Then I dropped into a chair, exhaustion finally catching up. Mike leaned over. "You think they'll come back?" I closed my eyes, picturing the figure's blank stare. "If they said next, they expect me." My voice cracked. "They want me to go inside." He placed a hand on my shoulder. "We'll do it together." I nodded, grateful but hollow. Together. We geared up for the final entry. Flashlight, taser, pistol, evidence markers, and a GoPro strapped to my chest. At 5:45 a.m. we rolled out. Convoy formation, unmarked sedan, marked cruiser, 2 backup units. The sky was a deep purple, the first tendrils of dawn creeping behind low clouds. I felt the old rasping thrill of a call, the adrenaline sparking in my spine. Only this time the call was personal. We arrived at 413 Elm. The yard was empty, the raincoat torn and discarded on the lawn as though snagged by a branch. Motion sensors and evidence tape fluttered in the breeze. My boots crunched on the path. I paused, recalling the laughter, the whisper, the tally marks. I took a deep breath, keyed my mic. "Haze to all units. Move in on my signal. I'm going up." Mike fell in beside me. The front door was ajar, never a good sign. I nudged it with my toe. It swung open, groaning. The porch was empty, the tally marks freshly carved, rainwater pooling in the grooves. The X shone dark against the wood. I raised my light into the threshold and stepped inside. The living room was cold, silent, floorboards slick with condensation. My flashlight beam caught on the fireplace mantel, where the torn photograph fragment lay face up. I knelt and picked it up. On the back, scrawled in matching ink, "Find me." That was all. The rest was blank. I looked to Mike. He nodded. We swept our torches across the room. Furniture overturned, curtains drawn back, dust motes drifting like tiny specters. The front window was wide open. Footprints led out into the yard. But another set of prints led deeper into the house. Bare footprints, small, rounded, like a child's. My pulse stuttered. I whispered, "The boy." Mike froze. "You think," I shrugged. "Or someone wearing his shoes." Before we could move, a soft scraping behind us made us whirl. The shadow of a child's toy rolled across the floor. A single plastic soldier. Helmet caved in, lying on its side. I exhaled. He's setting the stage. We followed the prints to the kitchen. The air was thick with the smell of toast. still warm, cutting through the damp. On the counter sat 2 plates, one smeared with jam, the other empty. A half-drunk glass of milk stood half full. My throat clenched. Someone had made breakfast, waiting for us. A noise upstairs. Footsteps, light and quick. I motioned Mike to stay. I moved to the foot of the stairs, each step numbered in my mind. 1, 2, 3. My light trembled as I climbed. At the top landing, the hallway stretched into darkness. Doors on either side, just like before. I heard a soft humming, like a lullaby. My palm trembled as I edged toward the master bedroom door, which stood slightly open. I kicked it wide. The room was bathed in pink dawn light through slatted blinds. On the bed lay a single figure curled in a ball, a small boy, hair tousled, back to me. The hospital bracelet still glinted on his wrist, surgery scar faint but visible on his neck. He sang softly to himself, "Rockabye, baby." My voice caught. "You're safe now." He turned. His face was lined, not with the softness of childhood, but with the weary hollow of someone far older. His eyes were too big, too knowing. He dropped the lullaby and smiled, a slow, terrible stretch of lips that revealed nothing but darkness. "I missed you, Hayes," he whispered. "Next time, come find me." I raised my pistol, but before I could fire, he vanished, like mist dissolving in the air. The room went silent, and I felt the weight of every question pressing down. Who was this child? How had he survived? What did he mean by next time? And most of all, why did I feel relieved? I remember pulling onto that dusty lane just after the sun dipped below the pines, the windshield wipers barely moving in the light July drizzle. The cruiser's engine idled, heartbeat steady, as I killed the lights and eased the door open. The air smelled of wet earth and old wood, like the corner store back home in Baltimore, mixed with something fouler, something I couldn't name. My partner, Maria, nudged me and nodded toward the porch. The string of battered red, white, and blue bulbs flickered on despite the afternoon heat, a mocking echo of celebration in a place that felt twisted. Stepping out, my boots sank slightly in the soft shoulder gravel. The hum of cicadas buzzed overhead, a relentless backdrop to our approach. I flicked my radio off silent in case the static spooked whoever, or whatever, might be inside. Maria's hand hovered above her holster. I knew she was reading the same tension I felt coiling in my gut. 2 uniformed silhouettes in the dusk, moving toward a peeling screen door that creaked like a warning. She was waiting, Marianne Clark, shoulders rounded, brown hair limp and streaked with sweat. Her eyes, sunk deep in hollows, tracked us with a flat, desperate intensity. Behind her, 7-year-old Eli clutched the handle of an oxygen concentrator, its whispered hiss a reminder of fragility. The boy's sneakers scuffed the cracked concrete porch as he half-dragged, half-pushed the machine. He looked both younger and older than his years, hollow-cheeked, eyes too big for his face, like a puppet missing strings. "Deputies Jenkins and Ortiz," Marianne said, voice low, measured. The syllables felt rehearsed, like a script she had practiced nightly. "Thank God you're here." She glanced at Eli. His chest rose and fell in shallow gasps, then back to me. "My brother, he's out there. I don't know where. Meth. His bender started last night. He always gets worse." Her lips trembled. "He promised he'd be here this afternoon." I nodded, unclipped my body camera. It clicked on, its red light a small eye recording every twitch of her hands, every tremor in her voice. "Ma'am, we'll get through this. Can you tell us where you last saw him?" I kept my tone calm, professional, but the drill in my head spun. This wasn't just a trespass call. The wilting flowers by the door, the cracked siding, the shutters gaping, every detail histrionic, like the house itself was gasping for breath. She motioned us inside. The foyer smelled of mildew and something metallic, coppery, like old blood dried under the sun. A battered console table held faded photographs. A younger Marianne, smiling with two little kids at a 4th of July parade. Eli among them, neck cradled in his father's arms. The dates scribbled on the back caught my eye. June 2018. 6 months ago. I stifled a swallow. Time blurred. Last I saw him, her voice cracked. He went out back. Said he saw movement in the tree line. She gestured toward a window that overlooked a thicket of pines 24 yards beyond the kitchen. Shadows shredded the view. I stepped closer, noticing tracks in the mud. 2 sets of footprints heading into the underbrush, then none coming back. Maria called a dispatch check. No warrants, no outstanding calls for the brother's name. Good, less paperwork for us. But that meant nothing for the flicker in Marianne's eyes as she watched my radio, searching for hope. She rubbed her arms as if cold, though the humid air clung to my skin like a wet shirt. I crouched beside Eli. "Hey, champ," I said, voice soft. His eyes flicked up, alert, frightened. "You doing okay?" He nodded, lips chapped. His oxygen hose looped over his shoulder, a lifeline in red plastic. "You'd better stay here," I told him. "We'll find your uncle." He blinked slowly, trust and terror warring in his gaze. Upstairs, the bedrooms told more stories. A single bed with a quilt patterned in baseball bats, posters peeling off the walls, teams none of us had heard of, a crib stuffed with stuffed bears. No sign of his father, but evidence of a life interrupted. A forest of pill bottles lined the windowsill. Antibiotics, bronchodilators, antidepressants, none showing overdose risk. Just the needles and burnt tinfoil we didn't find. Back on the porch, the dusk deepened. Fireflies flickered ghostly. I thought I saw something move behind the trees, a shape, hunched, shifting. I raised my light. It played across a sagging fence, then a charred stump. No sign of life. Maria scanned in a circle. No radio chatter except our own. Marianne slipped to my side. Her voice was a whisper. "He won't hurt Eli. He loves him. But he's not himself." I felt her desperation, wanting protection yet fearing what waited. "We'll keep him safe," I said, though I wasn't sure who "we" was. The station? Social services? Babysitters? I left her phone number and promised patrol follow-ups. As we climbed into the cruiser, I took a last look at the house. The flickering lights, the hollow windows, the hush beyond. Something in me tightened, a premonition. We drove away, tires crunching the gravel, headlights cutting through the dark swirl of pines. Halfway down the lane, I hit the brakes. My stomach lurched. I'd forgotten something. Her look, how she stared at those lights like they were the only proof the world still spun. Like they might be keeping something alive in that house. I wondered if those bulbs would burn out tonight, or if they'd stay on, mocking anyone who passed by. By the time we reached the station, the sweat had dried on my back, but the unease clung. I filed the report. Nothing extraordinary. No warrants, no signs of violence, no drugs. Just a worried woman and a kid on oxygen. Yet I couldn't shake the memory of that basement door, painted in peeling white, screaming to be opened. I told Maria, something's off. Not just the situation, her. She nodded, running a hand through her hair. I felt it too. We'll check back tomorrow. We locked eyes, the silent agreement passing between us. None of this sat right. That night I drove home slower than usual. The road curved through farmland, silos outlined against the sky. My cruiser's cabin felt cramped, haunted by the echo of Eli's cough, Marianne's stare. At home, my CO detector blinked green. I chalked it up to relief, but I know better now. Detectors don't lie. I fell asleep in my gear, dreams crawling with flickering lights and muffled screams. When I woke at dawn, my radio was dead silent, but my mind buzzed. I showered, resentful of the scalding water on my shoulders. I laced my boots, strapped my duty belt, and walked out to the cruiser, permanently stained by what I'd seen. Because out here, in the rural stretch between pine and pasture, shadows aren't just the absence of light, they're promises. And as we rolled back toward that house, my gut clenched. We were heading right into them. We rolled into the station garage just before 7 a.m., headlights ghosting across the concrete floor. Maria killed the engine and sat there for a long moment, hands resting on the steering wheel as if she could still feel the tension buzzing beneath the metal. I unclipped my holster and let my radio dangle, the device suddenly heavy against my uniform. We both knew what had to happen next. We needed to go back to that house. Inside the briefing room, the fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Coffee steamed from styrofoam cups as officers drifted in for the morning shift change. I emptied my pockets on the table, wallet, keys, badge, half-eaten granola bar, and took a sip of black coffee, the bitterness burning at the back of my throat. Maria set her cup down, drew in a breath, and met my eyes. "I checked the CAD," she said quietly. "No new calls, nothing tonight." She flipped open her notebook. "Eli's in foster care until CPS looks at the case. Marianne's at County General under a 5150 hold. They ran tox screens, no illicit substances." Her pen hovered. "Carbon monoxide levels were high. They sealed the house." I nodded, swallowing. "So what do we do? Report it as a CO leak and move on?" She let her gaze drift to the wall-mounted police clock, its second hand ticking in white staccato. "We can't. That house, there's more to it. That woman wasn't just sick, she was contaminated. Marginally exposed, but enough to crack her mind. And Eli survived because of that oxygen concentrator. What else in that house could be?" A knock cut her off. Deputy Carlson stuck his head in. "You two on the Clark call again?" Maria looked up. "Yeah." She closed her notebook. "We'll be back out." He frowned. "Be careful. Heard someone tried to break in last night. Yard camera caught a figure slinking near the windows. No ID on the tape yet." My chest tightened. "Someone's messing with the house again?" Carlson shrugged. "Looks like." "You two want backup?" Maria exchanged a glance with me. "No," I said. "We'll handle it." He nodded, uneasy, then left. The door clicked shut, and we were alone again with the hum of the AC vent and our own distracted breath. I rubbed my temples and said, "I need to see that basement. There's something we missed." She slid a file across the table. Property records, plumbing permits, a decades-old blueprints sketch showing a coal chute, and an attached root cellar. The basement space extended farther under the lawn than the house footprint, an unexplored crawl space. "This wasn't in the inspector's report," she said. "Didn't know it existed. Whoever sealed it with hazmat just plugged the water heater room." I stared at the lines tracing a narrow tunnel beyond the furnace. "We have to get in there." My voice sounded raw. "If someone's back at the house tonight, that crawl space could be the way in." Maria bit her lip. "We need a warrant for that tunnel." Her pen tapped the file. "We can get one fast, but we need to secure the scene tonight." I nodded. "Get hazmat to clear the CO levels. Social services to keep Eli at the safe house. We lock down the perimeter." The gears clicked into motion. "I'll run the warrant paperwork. You call the CO team and CPS." By noon, we had our orders. The house was cordoned off with yellow tape. Deputies stood at each corner. The hazmat crew in full gear tested every room again. Floors, windowsills, ceiling joints, until the handheld monitors read 0. Vents were purged. Fans run for an hour. CPS had removed Eli's oxygen concentrator and sent him to a foster home 2 counties away. Marianne was asleep in a secure psychiatric ward, her file marked for long-term evaluation. Maria and I approached the porch together, flashlights clipped to our belts. No more flickering holiday lights. Someone had cut the power. The front door lay slightly ajar, its latch bent inward. We drew weapons, not out of expectation of violence, but to show presence. Inside, the hallway was cooler, still damp from the morning's decontamination fans. Dust motes hung in the shafts of light from the high windows. I clicked on my body camera. Deputies, Jenkins and Ortiz, securing additional interior access. CO levels, safe. CPS status, juvenile removed. Maria recorded the conditions. All clear for search warrant execution. Basement access pending. We stepped into the kitchen where the first call had brought us. Its linoleum floor scuffed, counters overturned as if someone rifled through drawers. I dusted for prints at the faucet. None. Under the sink, a spray of cobwebs, but no hidden contraband. A scrap of paper fluttered to the floor. An old receipt dated December 23rd, 2017. I pocketed it. A Christmas tree farm, 20 miles north. Some memory Marianne clung to. Beyond the kitchen, a door led to the back porch. Gray light filtered through its cracked window. Maria shone her light on the eastern wall, following the seam where paneling met floorboards. "Here," she whispered. A row of old coat hooks was bolted above. 2 hooks were newer than the rest. She pried the board gently. A latch clicked. A hidden door swung inward. We descended 4 narrow steps, the concrete cool and damp underfoot. The headroom shrank until we had to hunch. My breath bogged in the beam of my flashlight. The tunnel stretched 10 paces before opening into a root cellar. Packed dirt walls, tin cans on rickety shelves, pottery shards scattered. There, humming softly in the corner, was another oxygen concentrator, identical to Eli's. Maria's voice trembled. "Why are there 2? I stepped closer. The machine hummed as if waiting. Black mold curled along the walls. A rusted hand tool lay discarded. The air smelled stale, like old root vegetables mixed with something acrid. My light caught a polished copper pipe rising from the floor, then bending into the wall above. The seam was brittle, corroded. I traced it to a valve wheel half a foot above the floor. "This is feeding the furnace room upstairs. If it's open to the house," I swallowed. Someone could have been exposed to CO for weeks. Maria shone her light upward, illuminating the staircase returning to the utility room. No wonder Marianne deteriorated. But who built this tunnel? Was it original, or did someone add it later? I shook my head. Doesn't matter now. We need evidence. Photographs, measurements. Then we call in building code enforcement. But first, check for footprints. We circled the cellar. In the damp earth near the pipe, boot prints sunk into the mud. 2 different sizes, one small, one larger. The smaller matched my boot size. The larger was a size 10, like Maria's. She stepped backward, eyes wide. Did I walk down here before? I froze. "You're telling me you've never—" She raised her badge. "I wasn't here yesterday." My pulse thundered. "I saw you clear the fans upstairs." She shook her head. "I worked the hazmat entry point outside. I never touched that valve or came down here." A third boot print lingered. Smaller than mine, newer, pressed into the damp edge. I knelt, pressing my finger into the mud. The print gave way easily. "Someone's been coming back," I said. "Not just random trespassers. Someone who knows this place." Maria rounded on me. "You think it's the kid's dad?" I didn't answer. A faint clink echoed somewhere above, like metal against metal. We both jumped. I swept my light up the tunnel. Shadows pooled at the ceiling. My radio crackled to life. "Deputy Ortiz, report!" Her mic feed spluttered. She looked at me, panic flashing. "My badge, my radio is dead." My own device went silent too. Dead battery? No, it should have hours left. My breath caught. We were underground, cut off. The cellar felt oppressively small, and the tunnel exit was a narrow slit of yellow light. A scraping noise drifted toward us, soft but steady, like fingernails on wood. It came from the direction of the valve. Maria swallowed, flashlight wavering. "Sam, someone's here." I swallowed. "Stay calm." I reached for my phone. No signal. My hand shook as I clicked the camera app. The phone light activated, cutting a thin beam. In the corner, half hidden behind a stack of canned beans, I saw movement. A shapeless mass shifting. I whispered, "Identify yourself." Silence answered. The beam tracked to a figure crouched low, knees drawn up, face obscured by shadow. Its breathing was shallow and quick. I hissed, "Show your face!" It lunged forward, knocking the beam out of my hand. I stumbled backward, heart pounding. Maria shouted, "Sam!" We scrambled in the dark, me fumbling for my flashlight, her reaching blindly for her taser. The figure darted past, scraped against the wall, and vanished into the tunnel. My light flicked back on, illuminating a single shoe print by the valve. Small, half covered with fresh mud. The tread pattern of a child's sneaker. My chest tightened until I couldn't breathe. "It's Eli," I gasped. "Eli's been down here." Maria caught my arm. "That's impossible. He's in foster care." I shook my head, fear roaring. Someone's luring him back. They want him exposed, or worse. The rustle of movement echoed again, followed by a soft giggle, a child's giggle, high and mewling. My reflection in the damp wall stared back at me, wild-eyed. Panic coiled like a snake. I fumbled for my radio, slammed the power button, dead. "Maria," I said, voice trembling. "We need to get out. Now." She nodded, voice steely. "That tunnel is our only exit." I swallowed bile. "After you." Step by step, we edged toward the narrow opening, the giggle trailing behind us, growing fainter, then swelling suddenly. A cacophony of childish laughter and metallic creaks. I didn't look back. As we reached the bottom step, my radio crackled to life. "Ortiz? Jenkins? Are you still with me?" It was Carlson's voice, full of static. Relief and dread mixed in my chest. "Carlson, we're in the basement. Something's down here." My breath caught. A soft weight tapped my shoulder. I spun around, nothing there. The tunnel behind was empty, but the giggling had stopped. Silence pressed in. I exhaled. "Maria, let's go." We climbed the stairs, hearts pounding, flashlights illuminating smeared footprints on the walls. By the time we burst into the utility room, deputies were swarming in. Carlson at the front, shotgun raised, worry etched across his face. Carlson's radio crackled. "CO levels are safe." Warrant log completed. "Officers secure upstairs." He looked at us. "You okay?" Maria's voice shook. "We need to find Eli." His eyes widened. "He's not here." We checked with CPS. I stared at him, breath ragged. "Someone's playing us, using that house." He nodded, subdued. "We'll bring in detectives." I sank to the floor, adrenaline ebbing into exhaustion. Maria knelt beside me. The basement door slammed shut behind us, as if by force. Carlson ran to it, tried the handle. It was locked. He cursed. "They're in there." Maria's eyes locked onto mine. "We lost him." And at that moment I realized we weren't just chasing a missing boy or investigating a CO leak. We were trapped inside something that had chosen us, and it wasn't done yet. I pressed my back against the cool concrete wall, every muscle trembling as Maria's footsteps echoed overhead. The basement door, our only barrier between us and the rest of that house, was locked tight. My flashlight beam danced across the damp floor, illuminating jagged footprints in the mud that led nowhere, as though whoever made them could vanish into the darkness at will. My heart pounded so loud I thought it might crack my ribs. "Sam," Maria whispered, voice low, urgent. "We need to find another exit. There has to be one." I swallowed hard, mouth dry. The blueprints. My hand fumbled for the file I'd tucked into my belt. The paper was damp and smeared, but I could make out the thin lines, a narrow crawl space branching off behind last night's furnace room, leading back beneath the lawn. "That tunnel splits in two," I said. "One side goes back to the utility room. The other, I'm not sure." She crouched beside me, flashlight in hand. "Then let's move, before whatever's down here circles us." I forced myself to my feet, wincing as the camera clipped to my belt scraped the concrete. My radio lay beside me, useless. My sidearm felt heavy at my hip, almost comforting. Together, we edged toward the far end of the cellar, where the corrugated metal of the furnace room door sagged on its hinges. I pressed my ear to the rusted metal. No whispers, no scuttling. Only the distant drip of water somewhere deeper in the earth. Maria slid her shoulder under the latch and pushed. The door groaned open, revealing a low-ceilinged corridor of exposed pipes and tangled wires. The smell hit me first. Diesel, damp wood, and something yanked straight from a nightmare. An acrid tang like burned hair. I flicked my light along the walls. The mortar was cracked. Roots snaked through crevices, and every 10 feet or so rusted brackets held what looked like ancient plumbing. "Stay close," I murmured, crawling forward until I could stand. Maria followed, her light bobbing like a firefly. The tunnel curved sharply, the walls narrowing until we had to tilt our heads. I felt for the horizontal pipe running above us. It glowed orange in the flashlight, heated by something I couldn't see. My throat seized. "We're getting near the broken pipe," I said. She nodded, breathing shallow. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" "Yeah." I shone my light at the seam, where new welds clashed with old rust. Evidence of recent work. Someone patched this up, maybe to stop the CO leak, maybe for another purpose. Whoever built this tunnel wanted us to find it. A thin slap of something brushing the wall behind us made us both spin. The beam landed on a streak of red mud, like someone dragged blood-covered cloth along the bricks. I swallowed, hunching my shoulders. "We're not alone." We moved faster, following the pipe. The tunnel ended at a narrow hatch in the floor, bolted shut with a single heavy latch. I knelt to inspect. No keyhole, just a crudely welded seam. My breath caught. This was no service hatch. I stood and used the butt of my flashlight to strike the weld. Sparks flew. Metal groaned, shivering. Maria took over, striking again and again until the seam cracked. With a final snap, the hatch whined open. A thin beam of sunrise filtered through the gap, illuminating splintered wood. I lodged my flashlight in my mouth, gripped the edge, and hauled it open. It spilled onto the back porch. The same one we'd first approached 2 nights ago, littered now with broken boards and footprints. A garden hose lay coiled, its end dripping. The porch railing was missing a baluster. Splinters jutted. Maria followed, sliding out, gun drawn. I crawled out last, dusting gravel from my uniform. The air was crisp, cool, nothing like the damp stench below. The front door lay ajar. We paused, scanning the yard. No lights, no movement, only the sagging trees and the gray sky. Then I saw footprints leading away toward the tree line. 2 sets, one adult, one small. I sheathed my flashlight and radioed Carlson. Carlson, it's Jenkins. We've breached the basement exit. 2 sets of prints heading north. The hatch was recently cut. No sign of forced entry downstairs except that hatch. Be advised, suspect may have left on foot. Static crackled. Then Carlson's voice. Copy that. Back up en route. Units heading to intercept north perimeter. I exhaled. Good, let's follow. We left the porch in single file, adrenaline coursing. The first set of footprints were clear. Deep heel impressions, size 11. Mine, from yesterday when I'd surveyed the yard. The smaller ones were tiny, toddler-sized, the tread pattern of a hand-me-down sneaker. I blinked. That's Eli, Maria finished. Her voice trembled. I swallowed. He followed us. We sprinted toward the cratered dirt lane, where our cruisers stood parked behind yellow tape. Carlson's gray cruiser rolled up as we emerged, headlights grazing the treetops. He jumped out, shotgun in hand. What's your vector? I pointed down the lane. He's that way, but we need to check the house again. Something's wrong. Maria cut in, voice tight. I saw old prints up there. Evidence of someone living in the attic. I swear I felt eyes watching. Carlson frowned. No sign of forced entry upstairs. Hazmat sealed it. I shook my head. Hazmat only sealed the furnace room. Someone broke in through that basement hatch, lived there, waited for us to find it. My throat closed. They know our procedures. They know how we think. We fanned out. Carlson and Maria ran parallel down the lane toward the old tree line, me cutting through the yard toward the front door. As I passed the porch, I saw it. A child-sized handprint smeared on the white railing. The print was no longer clean, smudged with dirt and something darker, sticky. I squatted and touched it gingerly. My finger trembled. It felt warm. "Maria," I called, voice raw. She rounded the corner, eyes wide. I held up my finger. This was fresh. She pressed her palm beside mine. And it wasn't there this morning. Carlson radioed in. "Deputy Ortiz, Jenkins. Suspect prints lead into the woods. We're approaching the tree line." Maria and I exchanged glances. "Let's go," I said. We tore down the lane, heartbeats thundering in our ears. Beyond the fence we found a narrow footpath, flanked by brambles and thick brush. The prints disappeared into the darkness of the trees. Maria brushed aside branches. I followed, hand on holster. The path narrowed until we could barely stand. The forest closed in. Then we saw it. A circle of broken Christmas lights half buried in mud. A fragment of that festive string that had never turned off. They lay just beyond an ancient oak carved with initials. M+C, July 4th, 15. Beneath them, footprints circled the tree, drawing a spiral in the soft earth. I knelt to examine the spiral. Child-sized in the center, adult-sized further out. At the center lay something small and wriggling. A handheld oxygen concentrator, the same model as Eli's, wires severed, battery dead. Beside it, a board painted white with a crudely carved message. "Safe with me." My skin crawled. "Whoever's doing this," I breathed. Maria's flashlight caught something beyond the oak, a silhouette hunched low, rocking. We froze. Then a soft sob. Then a child's voice. "Please don't leave me." I stepped forward, calling, "Eli? It's Deputy Jenkins. We're here. Come to the light." The silhouette stiffened. A small shape dropped from its arms and scuttled into the underbrush. The rocking stopped. A cold wind rattled the lights. The carved board's letters seemed to writhe in the flashlight beam. Maria and I exchanged a look of hollow dread. "We need backup," she whispered. Carlson's voice crackled. "Jenkins, Ortiz, status?" I swallowed past the lump in my throat. I'm with Ortiz. We found the concentrator. We have a message carved into a board. Safe with me. I think Eli, he ran off deeper in. Carlson's tone went bone white. "Hold position. Don't pursue alone." My hand shook on the radio. "Copy that." I ended the transmission. Maria looked at me, eyes haunted. "Sam, what the hell is going on?" she asked. I clenched my jaw. "I don't know, but we've crossed into something beyond a simple missing child or CO leak, and if we don't get him back now..." The forest fell silent. My flashlight caught the board one more time before the beam flickered and died. Darkness swallowed us whole. I fumbled for batteries, breath ragged. Behind me, the faintest whisper, "Deputy Jenkins." My heart froze. My lungs burned as Maria and I pressed deeper into the thicket, the narrow deer trail twisting through oak and hickory until the forest canopy swallowed the sky. Every crack of dried leaves underfoot sounded like gunfire in my ears. My flashlight cut a swath through the gloom, illuminating the same twisted roots and broken branches that, only hours ago, I might have mistaken for a typical backwoods path. Now, each jagged stump and low-hanging limb felt like a hand reaching out to trip me, to pull me into the dark. "Eli," I called, voice raw. The beam bounced over a fallen log ringed with mushrooms and moss, then settled on the mud where his tiny footprints blurred into a skiff of geese feathers. I crouched to trace them. Toe prints pressed into damp earth, the same pattern as his old sneakers. The path forked here, 2 branches into shadow. Maria knelt beside me, her pale face lit by the flashlight's glow. "Which way?" she whispered. Her breath bloomed in the beam. The forest was eerily silent. No wind, no bird calls, just the distant drip of water. "We need to choose fast. Carlson's team said they'll be here any minute." I studied the prints. One set veered left, the other right, and beneath them, deeper in the mud, I saw a third track. The smooth sole of an adult dress shoe, not mine or Maria's, mangled into the shape of an arch. "He was led," I muttered, pressing my glove to the print. "Someone guided him. Or forced him," Maria said, voice trembling. She shone her light down the left branch. A narrow corridor of twisted saplings, roots snaking across the ground like cables. To the right, the path opened into a faint clearing, moonlight filtering through broken branches, enough to see a carpet of fallen leaves, undisturbed except for those prints. I swallowed. "Left is too tight. We might get trapped. Right seems more open." My mind raced. Grown men can chase down a child in a confined space. In a clearing, we stand a chance. "Let's go right." We advanced into the glade. The air here was cooler, the earth firmer. My radio crackled faintly, Carlson checking in, but I shut it off. Every transmission risked giving our position to whoever was watching. We needed to move quietly. At the edge of the clearing, a single tree stood apart, its bark peeled in a spiral around the trunk. Beneath it lay Eli's shattered oxygen hose, coiled like a broken serpent. The concentrator's battery pack sat a few feet away, twisted open, wires splayed. I picked it up, voice thick. Why would someone disable this? Maria scanned the tree line. To keep him from running back, he's vulnerable without it. I nodded, stomach churning. He's probably terrified, coughing, gasping. I clicked my pen light into the hose inlet. Nothing but dirt and a few dried leaves. He can't breathe well without it. A sudden rustle to our left seized my attention. My gun came up. Maria's followed suit. The beam flicked over hidden roots, broad leaves, then caught on a manila envelope nailed to a tree. I crossed and pried it free. Inside, a crumpled photo of Marianne Clark, taken on a bright December morning, her smile torn away, the image scratched with ink. She lied. In curling handwriting on the back, I tried to save him. You ignored her. My breath caught. She blamed us, I whispered. Marianne. Maria's eyes widened. She wrote this? Or someone wants us to think so? I studied the photo. Marianne's eyes glossy with tears, staring straight ahead. Beneath, someone had scrawled in block letters, "Find me." The edges of the picture were singed. Whoever left it here wanted us to follow. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Carlson again. I ignored it. We were on her ground now, every step choreographed by someone in the shadows. Maria brushed her glove across her forehead. Sam, she lied. What does that mean? She's the one who called us. She was the victim. I slipped the photo into my pocket. Maybe she's not the victim. Maybe whatever poisoned her was a warning. My pulse thundered as we turned away, following a faint trail of broken twigs leading deeper into pines so dense we had to push branches aside. The path sloped downward toward a shallow ravine. I could hear rushing water, distant but distinct, a creek bed. Darkness pooled ahead, broken only by Maria's flashlight, bobbing like a ghost. We reached the ravine's lip. Below, the creek glimmered silver in the moonlight. On the far bank, footprints led up a slick bank, the imprint of a child's hand leaving a smear of blood on a pale root. My stomach lurched. He's hurt. Maria's voice trembled. We need to cross. I peered down, 6 feet of exposed rock, slick with moss. No bridge. Around us, the earth sloped sharply. Maybe if we climbed down the path on the left. A crack echoed overhead, like a branch breaking. My light arced upward. A figure in dark clothing crouched on the bank above us, face hidden. The beam caught the gleam of wet eyes, adult, wild. He watched us. "Down here," I shouted, raising my gun. "Step forward, hands up." He didn't move. Instead, he pointed toward the creek bed. My stomach clenched. In the water, I saw something. Pale fabric drifting in the current, snagged on a rock. A small shirt, Eli's shirt, soaked through and stained. "No," I whispered. I dropped to my knees, leaning over the lip, heart hammering. I could almost see the rippling water, something bulky beneath, swimming slowly against the current. A shape too large to be a rock. Maria joined me, flashlight slicing through the dark. A pale arm, blade of a hand, fingers splayed. My hand shook as I flicked on my infrared. The heat signature was dim, but distinct, human. I swallowed bile. "He's alive, but he's down there." Maria nodded, face pale. "We have to get him." I scanned the bank above. The figure had vanished. No footprints, no broken twigs, only the echo of that crack. I stood. "We'll wade in. Cover me." I removed my jacket, gun belt, gloves, leaving my duty belt and weapon holstered to my thigh. Maria followed suit. Our uniforms bundled in a loose pile at the edge. I clicked my flashlight to steadiest beam and stepped onto the slick stones, water lapping at my boots. Cold shot up my calves. I pressed forward, knees sinking, water swirling around my waist. Halfway across, a hand grabbed my ankle. I yelped, shining my light down, a clenched fist of mud and roots, as if the earth itself reached for me. I kick-stepped free, sloshing forward until I reached the shirt. I yanked it toward me, strained to see beneath the surface. The current tugged at my legs. A second hand shot out, pale and trembling. "Eli!" I lunged, fingertips grazing skin. The water was ice. His small body floated belly down, soaked. Maria waded in beside me, scooping him under his armpits, dragging him toward shore. His eyelids fluttered, a soft gurgle escaping his throat. My breath hitched. When we reached the bank, I collapsed on my knees, Maria beneath me, cradling Eli as he coughed and choked, water dripping from his lashes. I ripped at his shirt to clear his airway, slapped his back. His chest heaved, eyes opening. He looked up, face pale, a slit of moonlight in his pupils. "Deputy Jenkins," he whispered. "Help." "Shh," I said, pressing him to my chest. "You're safe now." But I wasn't sure we were. I rose, pulling Maria and Eli up the bank. Behind us, footprints, fresh, led back into the trees. But higher, carved into the oak's bark, was a new message. I kept my promise. My breath caught. "He lied," I muttered, voice trembling. That carving hadn't been there before. Maria knelt beside me, voice barely audible. Promise about what? I looked down at Eli's quivering form, already slumping unconscious in Maria's arms. His face was streaked with tears and grime. She promised to keep him safe. Marianne. The name hung between us, heavy and accusing. A distant howl pierced the night. The wind? The coyote? Or something else calling from the ravine? My flashlight flickered, and I realized with a cold jolt that Eli's respirator tubing, still taped to his nose, had snapped again. His chest was sinking. I fumbled for my radio. "Carlson, we have the boy. He's unharmed but hypothermic. We need a medic, now." Static, then Carlson's urgent voice. "On our way." "Stay put." I pressed my back against the tree. The forest around us was alive with rustling shapes. I could almost see them. Outlines of figures darting between trunks, smiling faces carved in bark, always watching. Maria wrapped a thermal blanket around Eli, shivering. I pulled out my phone. Still no signal. I knelt, brushing Eli's hair back. "You're safe," I murmured, but the words felt hollow. Maria placed a hand on my shoulder. "We need to get out." I stood, shoving the photo of Marianne into my pocket. The image felt hot. My reflection in the oak's chipped bark stared back. Eyes wide, sweat and mud streaked across my face. The promise carved above our heads whispered in the gloom. I kept my promise. Something in me snapped. "No more running," I said. My voice echoed through the trees. "We end this tonight." Maria nodded. She checked her weapon, then lifted Eli in her arms. "Lead the way." I exhaled, eyes sweeping the dark path back to the house, now distant beyond the ridgeline. The thrum of my heart was a drumbeat. Fear, anger, determination. I flicked on my flashlight one last time. The beam cut through the night, landing on a final clue nailed to a tree, a single Christmas bulb glowing faintly in the dark. I stepped forward, every sense alive. "This ends at the house," I whispered, voice firm. "Let's finish it." I stepped onto the creaking porch boards, heart hammering so loud I thought the house might hear it and come alive. Maria still held Eli in her arms, his chest rising in ragged breaths, small head lolling against her shoulder. I moved to the front door and pressed my palm to the peeling white paint, feeling its damp chill beneath my uniform. The latch gave way without resistance, and the door swung inward on silent hinges, revealing the same dim hallway where our nightmare began. Inside, every surface seemed to shudder with memories. The linoleum floor was scuffed and cracked. The walls were still stained where the hazmat team had scrubbed for poison. I switched on my flashlight and swept its beam across overturned furniture, abandoned toys, and empty pill bottles on a low table. The echo of dripping water came from somewhere deep within the house, like a pulse beating in time with my own. Maria set Eli gently on the couch that collapsed under his weight. His eyelids fluttered, and for a moment Just a flicker. I saw his eyes roll back, the blue irises dimming. I knelt beside him, checking his pulse. It was slow, fragile, but there. He moaned softly, hand reaching out as if in a dream. "Deputy Jenkins," he murmured, a voice thick and distant. "Why, did you leave me?" My throat tightened. "You're safe now, Eli," I said, voice trembling. "We couldn't let anyone hurt you." But the room flickered. The overhead bulb blinked, then cut out, plunging us into darkness so complete it felt like the air had weight. My flashlight cut a tunnel through the black, but the far end of the room dissolved into shadows that moved on their own. I stood, backing away, shining my light toward the archway leading to the utility room. The basement hatch lay open, its rusty edges glinting. I took a step forward, but found the floor clear. No path to the tunnel, no boarded-over door. It was as if the passages we'd uncovered had never existed. The house had swallowed its secrets. Maria's voice came from behind me, shaky. "Sam, something's wrong." I turned to see Eli standing unsteady, his eyes glowing faintly in the beam. His small chest was bare except for a thin hospital gown. The oxygen hose dangled uselessly at his feet. I rushed to catch him. "Eli, sit down." He raised a hand, palm open. "I'm tired," he whispered. "I don't want to go back." The words had no boyish tremor. They were flat, hollow, like spoken by someone older in a child's body. A chill crawled up my spine. I knelt again and gripped his shoulder. "Sweetheart, you were nearly lost. You need rest." His eyes locked on mine, unblinking. The blue faded to gray, and then I saw it. The faint outline of a woman's face superimposed over his. Haggard, hollow-cheeked Marianne Clark, eyes sunken, mouth twisted in anguish. I gasped and recoiled, stumbling onto the couch. Maria's flashlight beam darted to my face, then to Eli. "Sam?" she whispered. "What is it?" I rubbed my eyes and forced myself to look again. The boy's face was normal, except for smeared tears and mud. I reached out, touching his cheek. His skin was cold, damp, like the basement walls. "He's freezing," I muttered, wrapping my jacket around him. A soft clicking noise came from the hallway. A camera shutter, a metronome ticking. We both froze. The beam darted toward the corridor, illuminating a lens set in the wall above the stairs, half hidden behind a picture frame. The frame had fallen askew. A family portrait showing Marianne, her 2 children, Eli and an older sister I'd never heard about. The date stamped on the back read July 14th, 2017. I recognized the clothes, the same baseball quilt, the same striped shirt. I ripped the picture from the wall and held it close to the flashlight. The children's eyes seemed too bright, too knowing for a casual snapshot, and the older sister's face was scratched out, gouged with what looked like a key. Beneath the scratches, her smile lingered, haunted. I shivered, realizing the camera lens pointed directly at that spot, as if someone had been watching us watch them. A low moan drifted upstairs, the kind of groan that comes from joints stretching after decades of stiffness. The floorboard above creaked, then a soft dragging sound, fabric against wood. I choked back a sob. Maria swore under her breath. "He's up there." I rose, drawing my sidearm. "Stay with him," I told Maria, voice shaking. "I need to check." Maria squeezed my arm. "Be careful." I edged toward the stairs. My boots clicked on the worn treads. At the top, the hallway stretched out in both directions, lit by the moon through cracked windows. The bedroom doors yawned open like mouths. I stepped into the first room, a child's room. Walls painted sky blue, stenciled with clouds. On the bed lay Eli's torn t-shirt, stained and soggy. Half of the oxygen concentrator sat on the dresser, wires cut and frayed. Beside it, Marianne's battered tote bag lay unzipped, its contents spilled. Prescription bottles, a faded holiday card, and a folded pair of children's socks. Tiny, perfect, untouched. A breeze whispered through the broken window, carrying the tang of wet pine and something else. I felt heat surge in my cheeks as I realized the wind smelled like blood. The scent led me into the next room. The hallway behind me grew darker, as if the moonlight was being siphoned away. In the second bedroom, the walls were bare, except for a single drawing taped to the center. A crude sketch of a little boy standing beside a woman whose head was replaced by tangled roots. Beneath the drawing, a line in childish scrawl. I never left. I swallowed, hand shaking so badly I dropped my flashlight. It clattered against the hardwood. The beam spun wildly before coming to rest on the far corner of the room. A shape stood there, tall, gaunt, impossibly thin, wearing the dry cleaner badge of Marianne Clark's brother. Its head lolled, flesh stretched tight over bone, and in its hand was the missing Christmas bulb, glowing faintly red in the darkness. That light pulsed like a heartbeat. My breath caught. "No," I whispered. "This can't be." The thing tilted its head, click, click, like a record scratching. Then it smiled, lips thin, teeth jagged. I saw the woman's eyes in that smile. Empty hollows filled with carbon monoxide haze. I raised my gun, but its arm shot up faster, closing around me with icy fingers. I screamed, stumbling backward into the hallway. My gun fired, the shot echoing like thunder in the empty house. The figure reeled, releasing me. I scrambled past, diving down the stairs. Maria's scream met me in the foyer. I sprinted back to the couch where she knelt over Eli, only he was gone. His jacket, gloves, even his small hospital gown lay in a neat pile. A new envelope sat on the seat. Inside, a Polaroid of the boy we carried in, his face cheerful, alive, standing in front of the house. But in the background window was another reflection. Me, in full uniform, eyes wide, kneeling over an empty spot on the couch. Maria's voice caught. He was never here. I swallowed bile. He was never real. The envelope crackled in my hand. I dropped it, and it landed open on the floor, revealing a single message scrawled in spidery handwriting. "Thank you for bringing me home." I turned to Maria, tears stinging. "Who have we been carrying?" Behind us, the Christmas bulb flickered on the wall, glowing gold where it hadn't been nailed. The soft click of its switch echoed in the silent house. I swallowed, voice barely audible. "Let's finish it." And as I spoke, the bulb went out, plunging us into a darkness so complete it felt alive, waiting. I slid out of the cruiser and paused at the edge of the old barn's shattered threshold, flashlight trembling in my hand. The night air was thick with fog that curled around the broken boards like specters, and every breath felt charged, electric, as if the darkness itself was watching me. My pulse hammered in my ears, louder than the distant rumble of tires on the highway. Somewhere beyond the fog, Deputy Herrera's footsteps echoed against rotted wood, a sickening counterpoint to my own pounding heart. The beam of my flashlight sliced through the gloom, illuminating rotting hay bales, rusted farming tools draped in cobwebs, and the mottled flesh of a dead rat half buried in straw. I took a step forward, mud squelching beneath my boots, and felt the hair on my neck prickle. My radio lay clipped to my belt, speaker crackling faintly with static and the occasional bark of a dispatch channel I'd long since learned to filter out. Tonight, though, every crackle felt like a warning. I remembered leaning against the driver's door 30 minutes earlier, sipping cold coffee and telling myself this was routine. Trespass call, simple. Flashlights and voices in an abandoned barn. often just kids chasing ghosts. My breath had steamed in the crisp October air as I tuned the cruiser's radio. Unit 12, Angle 3, responding to 1031 at Pine Hollow Road, I'd said, my voice steady, easy, predictable. Now, with the flashlight's beam dancing over splintered walls, I realized how wrong I'd been. I edged deeper into the belly of the barn, every floorboard complaining under my weight. Herrera's steps fell silent. He'd moved to cut off the exit through a side window. I knew he was there, lurking just beyond the halo of my beam, waiting to flank whoever, or whatever, was inside. A sudden scuffle of broken wood drew my attention to a half-collapsed loft above. I swept the light upward. A shadow flickered, high among the rafters, where the moonlight bled through jagged gaps. My breath caught. Whoever it was must have climbed up, peering down at me like prey. I spoke without thinking. "Morgan, County Sheriff's Office. Come down where I can see you." My own voice startled me, harsh against the silence. The silence answered. Then a low creak, as if the floorboards themselves were shifting. I inched forward, chest tight with anticipation, and heard the soft scrape of sneaker against pitched wood. I ducked under a broken beam, following the sound, until the beam landed on a narrow hallway patched together with weathered boards. It led behind the barn, into a crawlspace that opened onto the farmhouse beyond. Memories of training kicked in. Don't rush, clear your sectors, keep safe distance. I didn't. I edged through the crawlspace, knees scraping against rotten wood, hands sliding along cool, damp boards. The air changed, rancid with decay, salted by sweat. Flashlight beam danced across moldering floral wallpaper, warped by water stains. An overturned rocking chair lay on its side, its runners split and twisted like broken ribs. A child's toy truck, coated in dust, sat wedged beneath the rocker. A silent testimony to someone's desperate flight. My radio crackled again. Herrera's voice clipped. "You sure you want to get deeper in there? I've got your 6. I swallowed, clearing my throat. "I'm good," I muttered, though my voice trembled. "Stay sharp." I edged onward, following a faint wet trail that led around a corner into a dimly lit room. The moonlight seeping through a cracked window painted the space in shifting cobalt shadows. Then I saw him. A boy, maybe 18, hunched in the corner. His hoodie was plastered to his skin, soaked through with something dark. Blood? Sweat? I couldn't tell. He looked up at me, eyes wide, distant, terrified, as if he'd been expecting a monster, not a deputy. He opened his mouth, no words came. My training told me to draw my weapon. My gut told me to lower it and speak. I hesitated. In that instant, he sprang to his feet and bolted past me, disappearing through a hole in the opposite wall. "Stop! Sheriff's Office!" I yelled, dropping into a half sprint. The world blurred. Splinters of wood, spray of dust, the flash of headlights outside as Herrera caught sight of me through a broken window. My foot caught on a protruding board, sending me sprawling across the straw-strewn floor. I bit back a curse, slapped my flashlight back on, and scrambled to my feet. Ahead, the hallway forked. I chose left, adrenaline sharpening my senses. The faint crunch of gravel underfoot, the metallic click of a door latch somewhere deeper. My legs pumped, lungs burning. The boy's heavy breaths echoed in my ears, mixing with my own ragged panting. I rounded another corner, almost out into the open, when a deafening crack split the air. I didn't register the pain at first, just a flash of white-hot heat at my temple, and a spray of wetness that splattered across my uniform. My flashlight tumbled from my grip, clattering against the floor. My vision tunneled, whirled, tilting as I staggered sideways and slammed into the wall. I tasted copper, and felt bone crush under impact. It knocked the wind out of me, collapsing my breath into a choked gasp. Darkness closed in. My cheek throbbed with every heartbeat, a pulsing ache that threatened to pull me under. I pressed a shaking hand to my temple, fingers coming away slick with heat. My radio lay just out of reach. I knew I should call it in, offer my position, request aid, but all that came out was a whisper. Medic, need. My voice trailed into a dry rasp. Panic clawed at me. Every textbook protocol dissolved into a primal fear. Stay alive. Beyond the dark veil, I heard Herrera's panicked shout, "Deputy down!" I need. Then the pounding of his boots as he charged toward me. Footsteps reverberated up the barn walls, mixing with the distant wail of sirens that grew closer by the second. My eyelids fluttered. I balanced on my knees, straining to stay conscious, to keep my weapon trained toward the hole where the boy had vanished. A wet trail of blood traced from my temple down my cheek to my collar. I tasted grit and fear. Somewhere in the distance, dispatch acknowledged the gunshot, orders cutting through my haze. All units respond code 3, EMT en route. I tried to focus on the sound, on grounding myself in duty, but the world rocked, vision doubling. Herrera's beam caught me in its glow as he dropped beside me, yanking off his jacket to press a clean sleeve against my wound. "You're gonna be okay," he murmured, voice thick. "Hang in there, man." His eyes were frantic, but I saw something else, determination, relief. He shielded me, gun raised at the mouth of the hallway. I closed my eyes, heart hammering so loud I thought my ribcage might split. The boy's footsteps receded into the farmhouse beyond. The night swallowed his escape. I felt Herrera's weight behind me, his breath in my ear. "Stay with me," he said. I didn't know if I could, but I had to. Because once you cross that threshold into midnight encounters, the darkness doesn't just wait, it hunts. The world spun in slow motion as Herrera's hand pressed against my wound. The barn's splintered walls receded into darkness, and I clung to his voice like a lifeline. Somewhere above us, the moon carved pale shapes through the broken roof, but I felt trapped in a void. Every breath scorched my lungs. I heard dispatch over Herrera's radio, a calm, precise voice that sounded impossibly distant. "Medic ETA 2 minutes. All units proceed with caution. Suspect possibly armed and dangerous." Herrera's grip tightened. "You okay?" he asked, though I could already see the panic in his eyes. I swallowed past the bitter tang of blood and managed a nod. My cheek throbbed with every heartbeat. I tried to shift my position, to gain a clearer view of the hallway where the shooter had vanished, but my legs trembled, buckling beneath me. Herrera scooped me against his side, supporting my weight. "Hang on," he murmured. Time stretched, measured by the drip-drip of blood seeping through my uniform and the ragged echo of my heartbeat in my ears. I focused on the rhythm. 1, 2, 3, forcing myself to count until my head stopped spinning. My training flashed through my mind. Render aid, secure the scene, contain the suspect. But the rules dissolved under the weight of pain. All I could think, stay conscious. Stay alive. Sirens tore through the night, harsh and urgent, reverberating through the barn's hollow interior. I felt the floor tremble with each engine note. Herrera half carried me toward the doorway, drawing his weapon as he went. Outside, floodlights from 2 additional cruisers bathed the barn's exterior in antiseptic glare. I heard voices shouting, officers clearing perimeter, commands in clipped tones. Their footsteps thundered up the wooden ramp. A paramedic knelt beside us, flashlight in one hand, trauma kit in the other. Her face was calm and practiced. "Deputy, stay with me," she said, voice low. She tore open my uniform and unbuttoned my collar, exposing the ragged wound at my temple. The breeze shifted against my exposed skin, sending a chill through me. She pressed gauze against the cut, warning me softly, "You're going to feel pressure." I gritted my teeth as she applied a compress. Herrera saluted the paramedic with a harsh breath. "We need evac now," he urged. The paramedic snapped on gloves and began an IV line. I felt the needle pinprick in my arm and almost gagged at the shock of cold saline flooding my veins. My vision threatened to flicker again as I lay back against the stretcher. The barn's rotten floorboard seemed miles beneath me. I closed my eyes for a moment, darkness pressing in. When I opened them, I was strapped onto the gurney, EMTs moving around me with mechanical efficiency. Herrera hovered at my head, hand on my shoulder. "We're losing him," I heard one tech say. Panic rose like bile. I fought to stay focused on Herrera's voice. "I'm right here," he whispered. A nurse slid a face mask over my mouth, and I tasted antiseptic as I inhaled. The world narrowed to a tunnel of bright strobe lights and muffled voices. As they lifted me into the ambulance, I tightened my grip on consciousness. I remembered the boy's face, eyes wide with fear, hoodie soaked in dark fluid, and wondered if he'd been hurt in the exchange. Guilt pulsed through me, sharper than any wound. If I hadn't chased him so recklessly, but hindsight came too late. The ambulance lurched forward, suspension groaning over gravel. I was strapped to the gurney, floodlights glaring through the rear doors, Herrera sprinting alongside. Every jolt sent shockwaves through my skull. I felt dizzy, the barn door swinging shut behind us, severing me from the place where it had all gone wrong. At St. Rita's trauma bay, I was rushed through sliding doors into a frenzy of surgeons and nurses. Clamoring alarms, clipped medical jargon, the hiss of oxygen, everything blended into a roar. A surgeon applied a clamp at my jaw, and I tasted metal as they inserted a suction tube. My vision blurred, and I drifted on the edge of blackness. Somewhere in the chaos, I heard Herrera's voice again. "He's the only partner I've ever had," he told the nurse. "Don't let him die." I tried to respond, to reassure him, but words failed me. My world faded to white. When I woke next, the sun was sliding over the horizon, painting pale ribbons through the blinds. My cheek felt like it had been ground to pulp. My jaw was clamped, wired shut. Tubes in my neck fed me liquids. The room smelled of antiseptic and something sweet. I blinked, disoriented, and saw Herrera asleep in a chair beside my bed, his uniform jacket draped over his arm like a shield. "How long?" I croaked, my voice cracked. Herrera started, blinking blearily. "You were out 3 days straight," he said, voice hoarse. "Rode with you here, waited each shift. Doc says you nearly bled out." He swallowed hard, eyes bloodshot. "You scared the hell out of me." Memories flooded back, the boy's desperate eyes, the sudden crack of the rifle, falling into darkness. I forced a sigh that rattled my ribs. "What happened to him?" I asked, voice small. Herrera shook his head. "Search didn't find a body, no trace. Dispatch thinks he slipped away when we secured the perimeter. Half the town's cops turned the place inside out. Nothing." He looked away. It's like he vanished. A chill ran through me. If he'd walked away, blood soaking through his clothes, how far could he have gone? My mind replayed every moment. The way he lingered in the shadows, how calmly he aimed, the metallic glint of the barrel. This wasn't a panicked kid with a stolen BB gun. This was someone who'd planned to use that barn as a trap, Over the next week, I lay in a haze of painkillers and nightmares. I feigned gratitude for the visitors, chaplain's prayers, boss's concerned emails, Herrera's silent vigil. But inside, something shattered. I replayed every step, every decision, torturing myself over what I'd gotten wrong. I should have called for backup sooner. I shouldn't have trusted my gut over protocol. If I'd stayed behind the cruiser's door, I might be alive. And so might he. When I finally returned to duty, it was under strict orders, desk assignment, limited field work. The barn remained cordoned off, crime scene tape fluttering across its entrance like a hangman's noose. I could see it from the sheriff's office window, but I was forbidden to go near. Every time I passed, I felt my pulse spike, the itch to enter rising like acid. They transferred me to dispatch for a month, logging calls, dispatching units, monitoring radio. It was hellish in its own way. Alone, trapped behind a desk, hearing every midnight encounter play out in real time while I sat helpless. Every frantic call for backup, every shot fired, ripped open old wounds. I trained new deputies on radio procedures, but my voice came out hollow. I'd spent my life on the street. Here, I felt useless. Then, 2 weeks into dispatch duty, I got the call I'd dreaded. Deputy down, crackled the radio. Rookie on a trespass call somewhere near Pine Hollow. The dispatcher's voice was calm, professional. Backup requested immediately. My skin tingled. I froze, hand hovering over the channel button. Images of that night flashed. Herrera's face, that boy's wild eyes. I felt a tightening in my chest, sharp as bone. I glanced at Herrera's empty chair across the room. He was out on a clearance, vacuuming piles or steering patrol cars away from the barn. I wasn't sure I could go back out there, but I knew I had to. Because if I stayed locked in this room, that boy would haunt me forever, slipping through shadows, reloading his rifle, waiting for the next deputy to fall. I cleared my throat and keyed the mic. My voice sounded tired but steady. Unit 12, Angle 3. Be advised, I'm en route. I grabbed my coat and radio, heart pounding. Sirens bloomed in the distance. I stepped outside into the October night, the cool air biting through my uniform. The barn loomed ahead, dark and silent, still a wound left open. My hand hovered over my holster. Each breath was a promise. I wouldn't make the same mistakes. I would be ready, because midnight encounters demanded. I eased out of the dispatch office and felt the night air wash over me like a baptism I never asked for. My legs were wobbly beneath me, as if they remembered too well the way they buckled inside that barn. Every step toward my cruiser felt like trudging through sludge. The engine's hum was a faint comfort, something solid beneath my hands. I flicked on the overhead console lights and tuned my radio to the local channel. Unit 12, en route to 1031, Pine Hollow Road, I announced, voice gravelly. Dispatch crackled back with a curt, "Copy that." I clicked the mic off and leaned back, closing my eyes for a second. I pictured the barn, the broken rafters, the hollowed corridors, the stale smell of rot and old fear. But tonight wasn't about me. It was about a rookie who'd gone in without backup, following the same script I'd once followed. I owed it to Herrera. I owed it to myself to be there. My cruiser's headlights carved golden arcs through the mist as I turned onto Pine Hollow. The road was narrower than I remembered, flanked by untended hedgerows and bramble. My mind replayed dispatch's words. Possible intruders reported inside. Owner claims voices, flashlight beams. Sounded innocuous enough, but I knew better. The rural cops were always the ones who found bodies in barns, squatting vagrants who'd trespassed too close to the dark. I clicked off the lights about 50 yards from the barn, pulled into the narrow drive, and cut the engine. The world settled into darkness, pierced only by moonlight and the glow of my flashlight beam. My heart drummed, steady, measured, exactly as training demanded. I stepped from the cruiser, letting the door sag behind me. My senses stretched outward, listening for shouts or the growl of a passing animal. The damp October air clung to my uniform. I pulled a thin glove over my fingers. It was one of those nights where every detail mattered. I crouched at the barn's side entrance. Boards ripped off, leaving a jagged gap. My gut twisted. That gap had been boarded up last time, a sign no one wanted strangers inside. Whoever was in there had planned for entry. I flicked on my flashlight, swept the beam across the gap, and peered in. Broken crates, coils of wire, scattered straw, no movement. Deputy Michaels, I called softly, voice low. Sheriff's office. Anyone inside, show yourself. My words echoed off the interior walls like a challenge. I listened. Silence answered, thick enough to choke on. I stepped through the gap, boots sinking into damp straw. My flashlight beam danced over overturned buckets and broken feeding troughs, revealing nested holes in the far wall, 3 of them, each just wide enough for an adult to squeeze through. That was new. Last time, there had been only one rat run into the farmhouse. Someone had added more. I frowned. That kind of modification meant either practice or patience. In either case, trouble. I advanced slowly, gun raised but not aimed, hand resting on the grip. Protocol said to keep your finger off the trigger until you see the threat, but experience told me it could take a microsecond for a fight to go lethal. I circled the outer wall, tracing the new holes, one at chest height, one lower, one at knee level. It reminded me of secret passages from old adventure flicks, until I remembered children who crawled through walls to escape parachute pants and puka shells. I pivoted toward the far corner, flashlight beam landing on a smear of dark red that glistened where shod feet had passed. I knelt, dragging my gloved finger through the stain. Fresh. Not older than an hour. My pulse doubled. Whatever was inside wasn't just a trespasser. It was someone who might be hurt, or hurting. Herrera to your 6, came the crackle in my ear. His voice was distant but unmistakable. I'm at the south window. No sign of anyone outside. Proceed with caution. I exhaled, the faintest tremor in my breath. Copy that. I'm inside now. No movement yet. I pressed on, following the trail of footprints in the dew-soaked straw. They led to the oldest hole, the one on the lower wall. It was carved roughly, fresh wood chips littering the ground on both sides. I swallowed, hefted my flashlight in my left hand and my service pistol in my right, and dropped my shoulder into the opening. The space beyond narrowed into a short crawl tunnel, just wide enough for my torso. I felt the rough wood against my chest as I slid through. My boots scraped gravel on the far side. I emerged in a dim hallway of the old farmhouse. Deep water stains mottled the ceiling paint, and the wallpaper peeled like shedding skin. Broken glass glittered on the floor. The low hum of my flashlight collided with the dead hush of the house. I half expected a tragic tableau, shell-shocked hitchhiker, blood pooling. Instead, I found nothing. A hallway that stretched out of sight, doors gaping like empty eyes. I radioed, main hallway clear, no sign of Deputy Michaels. Michaels was the rookie's name, a bright kid fresh out of the academy. I'd seen him at roll call last week, keen, polite, the kind who wanted to make a difference. Now, I worried I was second-guessing the academy's faith. Still here, boss, I added. No sign of him or any intruders. Silence. Dispatch replied, command requests update as soon as possible. I advanced, flashlight sweeping left, then right. illuminating peeling doors. The first one on my left was propped open, swinging slightly. I slipped inside, recognizing a storage room by time-worn shelving, a stack of cardboard boxes. I scanned the shelves. No boxes tumbled, no hidden figures. A draft cooled the back of my neck. I turned to leave, then froze. On the floor, amid shattered shards of plaster, lay Michael's radio, its antenna snapped. My gut lurched. He must have dropped it in a struggle. I knelt, reached out, and the radio skittered beneath my fingertip. On the floor beside it, muddy footprints led away, toward the next doorway. I rose, heart thumping, mind racing. "Herrera," I whispered into my mic. "Michael's radio. Looks like he was here. I'm following tracks to the next room." "Copy," Herrera replied. "Proceed carefully." I moved toward the next door. My flashlight caught the door frame. Holes pocked through the wood, like rifle placements. A chill sharpened. Someone had set up defensive positions. That explained the multiply entrances in the barn. This was a sanctuary, a holdout. But whose? And why call attention to it with stolen radios? I took a deep breath, bracing myself, and stepped into the room. The beam landed on a child's bed frame in the corner, spring mattress stripped bare. The walls were scrawled in handwriting too small to read from here, inches thick with frantic scrawl, names crossed out. "Apologies, please." "I'm sorry," one line read. "I can't go back." Another, "They're coming." I know it. I swallowed hard, my throat tightening. I heard it then, a faint moan, like someone calling for help. It echoed from a doorway opposite the bed. I aimed my flashlight there, a narrow archway leading deeper into the house. The moan came again, low, trembling. It sounded like a wounded animal. I proceeded, boots crunching plaster and glass. Every step set my nerves jangling. I pressed my ear against the doorframe and listened, breathing, ragged. Then a whisper. "Help me." Michael's voice. Relief and dread warred within me. Relief that he was alive. Dread that he was hurt and alone. "Deputy Michaels," I called softly. "This is Deputy Ramirez. I'm here to help. Where are you?" "Hallway, the kitchen," he rasped. I can't move." I slipped past the door frame, pistol raised, flashlight fixed on the hallway. The beam skated over a broken cabinet, tipped chairs, shattered dishes. A long smear of blood streaked across the floor toward a half-open door at the end. I followed it and saw Michael slumped against the far wall, arm draped across his chest, blood pooling on the floor beneath him. I cried out, dropping to my knees beside him. "Deputy, don't move," I ordered, though terror clogged my voice. I frantically checked his pulse. Steady but fast. He'd been stabbed, not shot this time. A deep gash in his side, dark and damp. "Hang in there," I murmured, pressing my hand against the wound. The blood flowed warm and sticky beneath my glove. He winced. "Can you talk?" I asked. He nodded weakly, eyes glazed. They took my radio, said not to call anyone." His gaze shifted to the doorway behind me. I flicked my flashlight around. No one there, but footprints led back into the living room. My head whipped back to Michael's. "Stay with me," I said, voice trembling. I peeled off my own radio, clipped it to his vest. "Use this. Call for backup." He tried to speak, but only managed to rasp. I slotted in fresh radio batteries and taped it to his hand. "Michaels, when you can, hit the button and say your location." I paused. "And don't worry about the microphone. I've got you covered." Michael's eyelids drooped. I cursed under my breath. I turned, scanning the living room, then set my jaw. I'd come for him. I wouldn't leave until he was safe. I rose to my feet and backed out of the kitchen, leaving him with a view down the hallway. "I'll be right back." I slotted my pistol at the ready, flashlight in the other hand. The living room was a ruin. Faded upholstery, glass shards, broken photo frames strewn on the floor. Another smear of blood guided me toward the front door. That trail split. One set of footprints led toward the back door, another toward the staircase up to the attic. My gut told me the attacker would make for the attic next, hiding, gathering weapons, calling for more accomplices. I clicked on my mic. "Dispatch, this is Unit 12. Deputy down, possible assailant in the structure. Request immediate backup and EMT to this location. Over." Static followed. Then, "Copy that. Backup en route." I clicked off. I edged toward the stairs, each step creaking beneath my weight. My flashlight beam flicked upward, cords dangling from ceiling joists, spittoon of cobwebs. The first step revealed a dark landing littered with debris. I paused, listening for movement. Silence. Then, a sudden slam, like a door being thrown open behind me. My heart jolted. Instinct took over. I pivoted, gun leveled, beam sweeping the room. The back door splintered under pressure as someone kicked it from the outside. A heavy-set figure in a dark hoodie burst in, eyes wild, rifle raised. We both fired. The crack of gunfire echoed against walls. I kicked myself into the hallway, sweat slick in the beam's glow. Pain blossomed behind my ribs. I'd been grazed. I tasted copper. I pressed against the doorframe, trying to steady my aim, heart hammering. The figure dove into the living room's gloom, disappearing behind overturned furniture. I fired again, not aiming to kill, just buying time. My breath came in staccato gasps. The attacker's boots thudded as they advanced, dragging something across the floor. I realized, with a sick lurch, it was a body. I stumbled back. The figure lunged, rifle butt smashing against my flashlight. The light shattered, plunging us into darkness. My gun light gone, I fumbled for my tactical torch in my vest, flicking it on. A harsh beam cut across the attacker's face for a fraction of a second. The same hollow eyes I'd seen last time. That familiar gaze. It was him. The boy from the barn, older now, sharper, with a look that killed any doubt. He fired. The bullet ripped into my shoulder, sending a shockwave of agony through my arm. My torch clattered to the floor, beam spinning wildly. Pain flared, white-hot. I dropped to one knee, pistol slung at my side, trying to bring my arm up. I couldn't. He advanced, rifle leveled. Through blurred vision, I tried to assess my options. The staircase behind me led to the attic, the source of more holes, more secrets. If I could retreat up there, maybe I could keep my distance, make a stand. I staggered sideways. Blood slicked my jacket seam, dribbling down. Every breath was fire. I fired from the hip, more reflex than intent. The shot rang hollow. He wasn't hit. He cocked the rifle, raising an eyebrow at my effort. I saw the barrel sheen. Time slowed. Flash of steel. Glint of moonlight off metal sights. I braced for the final shot. Then a door behind him slammed open. A flood of blue emergency lights burst across the room. Herrera and two other deputies stormed in, shouting. Heavies collided. Rifles drawn. Commands screamed. The boy froze, eyes darting to the new threat. In that instant, Herrera fired a single round. The attacker's rifle dropped as he crumpled, face hitting the floor in a thud that rattled my skull. Silence fell, broken only by the rasp of my breathing. Herrera rolled to me, yanking off my shoulder holster. "Michaels!" he yelled, voice cracking. The other deputies cuffed the attacker, dragging him away, but I barely registered. I gasped, pressing my free hand to my shoulder, pushing back the pain and the horror. Herrera knelt beside me. His face was ashen. "You okay?" he asked, voice trembling. I managed to nod, though it felt hollow. Adrian Michaels stumbled into view, supported by another deputy. He was pale, eyes wide, but alive. I closed my eyes, exhaustion crashing over me. The barn trip, the knife, the blood, it all spun together in a haze. I realized the real terror of midnight encounters. They never ended. They followed you, hunted you, pulled you back again and again. And even when one threat collapsed before you, another had already taken its place. I opened my eyes, looking at Herrera, at Michaels, at the handcuffed figure on the floor. The boy, man now, stared up at the ceiling, lips moving in silent prayer or apology. I wondered if he recognized me, if he understood what he'd done. I swallowed, voice hoarse. "Get me up." Herrera lifted me to my feet. I wobbled as I leaned on him, blood oozing warm between my fingers. I looked down at the house's torn interior, the fading shadows. In the dim glow of police lights, I saw the walls scrawled with names again, this time fresh ones. I realized they were mine, and Michael's and Herrera's, names carved in fear. I took a ragged breath. Let's go. The deputies led me and Michaels out into the night. I felt the cool breeze on my burned cheek, heard the sirens fade as we were carried to safety. But the barn loomed in the distance, its dark silhouette a reminder that even when you escape, the shadows remain. And somewhere deep inside, I knew this was just the beginning. I stepped into the pre-dawn haze, the cold air wrapping around me like a shroud. Michaels was leaning on Herrera's arm, blood matted through his uniform, but walking under his own power. The attacker was already loaded into a squad car, hands cuffed behind his back, eyes hollow. I watched the beam of my flashlight cut through the fog, illuminating the abandoned Reynolds barn in the distance. Its broken boards and gaping holes looked almost peaceful in the soft light, an illusion that made my blood run cold. Herrera guided Michaels toward an awaiting ambulance. I lingered behind, gazing at the scene of our nightmares. The barn's skeleton loomed silently, as though it were the only witness to the night's violence. My shoulder burned where the bullet had grazed me. My ribs throbbed where the blade had found me. Every breath was a reminder that we had survived, but the barn's dark corridors still whispered promises of untold horrors. A patrol sergeant approached, flashlight in hand and notepad ready. "Deputy Ramirez," he said quietly, "you both did good work out here. Deputy Michaels made a solid call for backup, and you got him out just in time." He glanced past me to the farmhouse. "We'll secure the barn and run forensics first thing. You need to get to the hospital, have that shoulder checked. I'll handle the rest." I nodded, the words sticking in my throat. My legs felt like lead, but I managed to salute. "Thank you, Sergeant." I turned slowly toward the road, catching one last glimpse of that worn wood and shattered glass. The night had drawn its secrets close, but daylight would pry them apart. At St. Rita's later that morning, the harsh hospital lights felt sterile and unreal. I lay on an exam table while a physician probed my shoulder, wrapping it in gauze and tape. The painkillers muddled my thoughts, but I stayed conscious, focused on being useful. Michaels occupied the bed across the hall, awake and pale, but alive. Herrera hovered between us, gratitude and worry etched on his face. The doctor spoke gently. "You've got a muscle contusion and a shallow laceration. You'll need a sling and rest, but you'll be fine." He offered a tired smile. "Better than last time. You're tough, Deputy." I nodded, clutching the side of the table. My mind swirled with guilt and relief. "Thank you, Doctor," I said, voice hoarse. I looked over at Michaels. He caught my eye and gave a small, pained thumbs up. I forced a smile in return. Whatever demons we both carried, we were alive to face them. By afternoon, Hospital staff wheeled Michaels off in a wheelchair. Herrera gave him a firm pat on the back. I hobbled outside, the chilly breeze clearing my head. I sat on the curb, watching the ambulance lights recede down Pine Hollow Road. A part of me wanted to follow, to ensure Michaels made it home. But another part knew I needed to be elsewhere, back at the barn. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was dispatch, checking on me. I silenced it and slid my hand across the grass. The dampness seeped through my pant leg. I stared down the road toward the barn, adrenaline stirring. I could almost hear the echoes of footsteps, the rasp of the boy's breathing, even now. I found the strength to stand and limped back to my cruiser. I called Herrera. "You coming out?" Silence crackled for a long moment. "Yeah," he replied finally. "I need to see the barn, too." We agreed to meet in 30 minutes. The road to Pine Hollow was empty, the sky bruised purple with the promise of sunset. My cruiser's headlights picked out the familiar hedgerows, skeleton trees, and the faint curve of the gravel drive. When I pulled in, Herrera was already there, leaning against his patrol car. He looked exhausted, but resolute. "You sure about this?" he asked as I climbed out. The wound on his side from the knife thrust still showed on his uniform, darkening under the streetlight glow. I nodded, flashlight in hand. "I need to go in, see what else is left." My voice sounded hollow, even to me. For closure, for answers. He exhaled and pocketed his keys. "I'm with you." We crossed the yard in silence, boots crunching over broken glass and stray boards. The barn's entrance yawned before us, as though inviting us back into its maw. I flicked on my light and swept the beam inside. Herrera followed, weapon raised. The stale odor of rot hung thick. Muddy footprints tracked across the floor, some old, some fresh. My pulse quickened. We found the 3 entry holes in the far wall. The central one had been widened further, fresh wood shavings piled at its base. I knelt, brushing aside the shavings. Embedded in the wood grain was the tip of a small metal lever, a part of a hinge maybe, something he'd left behind. I picked it up, rolling it between my fingers. "What do you make of that?" Herrera asked. I considered it. "A tool," I said. "Something he used to carve those holes wider, prepare an escape route or trap us deeper inside." We followed the footprints into the farmhouse beyond, entering the narrow crawl tunnel once more. The main hallway lay before us, empty and silent. I peered into the kitchen doorway where I'd found Michael's, but it looked undisturbed, sterile now under Herrera's flashlight. I felt foolish. The house had been processed, evidence collected. Yet my instincts drove me onward. In the living room, the staircase to the attic loomed. We climbed the steps carefully. The wood groaned in protest. At the landing, we paused beneath a single bare bulb that flickered ominously. The air here was colder, stale air trapped since the boy's last flight. Dust motes drifted in our beams. At the far end of the landing was a small door, previously sealed by a board. Someone had pried it open, screw holes fresh in the frame. Herrera shone his light across the floor. Behind the door, a narrow loft space barely big enough to stand. We stepped inside, shoulders brushing the slanted ceiling. The beam revealed a motley collection of children's drawings tacked to the far wall, crude sketches of farmhouses, siblings, and shadowy figures looming behind them. Beneath the drawings, scrawled in the same cramped handwriting from the earlier room, was a single line: "He never leaves." A shiver ran through me. I flipped the drawing over. On the back was a photo, torn from a small calendar. A smiling family of 3, father in uniform, mother at his side, young daughter beaming. Their names were printed in a child's block letters below: Officer Daniels, Emily, Sarah. Officer Daniels, not me, not Herrera, not Michaels. My heart hammered. Herrera caught my arm. "What is it?" I swallowed, turning the photo so he could see. "Look." His brow furrowed. He recognized the uniform. "That's the Reynolds' old neighbor kid, Mike Daniels. Went missing 20 years ago. His dad was a sheriff's deputy." I stared at the picture, the smiling faces. The loft's air closed in around me, pressing down. "He never leaves," I whispered. A chill stole across my skin. Another scrawled line beneath the photo read, "Someone always comes back." Silence stretched. The boy we'd captured was too young to be Mike Daniels, but the house had belonged to his family. Years ago, the family vanished from this farm. No bodies found, no clues. The local legend said Daniels had gone insane, convinced he was being watched, chased by ghosts. Then, one night, he laid traps in the barn and refused to answer the door again. They found the boards knocked out, footprints in the mud, but no sign of him. I swallowed hard, vision swimming. "He's been here all this time," I said, voice trembling, beating on every midnight encounter, waiting. Herrera's light flicked to mine. "You really think—" He didn't finish. I sank to the loft floor, photo in hand. "It's not the kid we arrested. It's his ghost, or whatever he's become." My jaw clenched. "No wonder," Michael said. "They said not to call anyone. He was defending his home." We sat there, side by side, breathing in the attic's stale air. Figures danced on the periphery of our beams, memories of footsteps, gunfire, panic. The boards across the curtain of darkness seemed to shift. The barn below groaned in the wind. I looked at Herrera. "We need to close this place. For good." He nodded, face set. "But how do you bury something that won't stay buried?" We left the loft without another word. Below, the barn and farmhouse waited in silence, ancient grievances echoing off every rotten plank. As we stepped onto the farmland, and the sky lightened with the first rays of dawn, I felt the weight of a story unfinished, a debt unpaid. At the squad car, I paused and turned back. The breakfast sun glinted against the barn's broken window panes. In one of them, I thought I saw a figure, a silhouette of a man in a weathered deputy's uniform, watching us leave. I blinked, and he was gone. I slipped into the driver's seat and closed the door. Herrera climbed in beside me. The engine roared to life. We drove away in silence, the barn receding in the mirror. Back at the station, the forensics team would declare the scene clear. Human suspect in custody, no further threat. My report would reflect that, but I knew the truth. Some calls don't end with arrests or evidence bags. Some calls open doors that should have stayed closed. That afternoon I sat at my desk, green uniform, crisp and clean. The photo of Officer Daniels and his family taped to my bulletin board. I filed my report, checked my equipment, and eyed the clock. Midnight shift would begin in a few hours. The barn's address loomed in my mind like a specter. I picked up the phone and dialed dispatch. Unit 12 to dispatch, requesting beep code and location for my next assignment. My voice was steady. "I'm ready for tonight's call." The operator's calm voice crackled back. "Copy that, Unit 12. You're cleared for routine patrol, Pine Hollow Road." Possible noise complaint at an abandoned barn. Over. I closed my eyes. The shadows lengthened around me, and the temperature in the station felt suddenly icy. I took a slow breath and whispered, "Here we go again." Because midnight encounters aren't just warnings, they're invitations. And some doors, once opened, never truly close. What would happen when I walked back through that threshold tonight? The cruiser's engine sputtered to life just before midnight, and I felt the old weight settle back onto my shoulders. equal parts dread and duty. Herrera sat beside me, silent, eyes fixed on the road ahead. The station lights blinked behind us as we headed back to Pine Hollow Road. Our uniforms were freshly pressed, badges gleaming, radios clipped firmly to our belts, but nothing about that felt reassuring. It was as if we were actors returning to a stage we'd already watched burn down. "Dispatch says it's only a noise complaint," Herrera muttered, voice low. He glanced at me, jaw tight. Some kids playing music in the barn? Or animals again? His question hung in the stale air of the cruiser's cab. I forced a dry chuckle. Probably raccoons or some drunk teenagers looking for a thrill. I turned the wheel onto the gravel drive and killed the headlights 50 yards from the barn, then cut the engine. Darkness swallowed us. Peak octane adrenaline pumped through my veins, warming me against the autumn chill. I jimmied the door open, boots hitting the ground with a soft crunch of gravel and broken glass. Our flashlights flicked on together, 2 beams piercing the midnight fog. The barn loomed ahead, skeletal and familiar, its broken boards and empty windows resembling a skull's empty eye sockets. I swallowed, throat tight. Every instinct screamed that we were trespassing into something no longer human. "Stay close," I whispered, stepping forward. Herrera followed, gun raised but not aimed, mag light riding steady under his other arm. Together, we crossed the yard, feet muffled against the leaf-strewn ground. I felt the barn's rotten timbers bearing down on me like an accusing finger, reminding me of every broken promise I'd made to myself to leave this place behind. Inside, the barn smelled of must and stale straw, but beneath that was a new odor, acrid, chemical, like burnt paper. Our beams swept the floor, no sign of teenagers or stray animals, just footprints, fresh and numerous, skirting around scattered farming tools. Overturned feed bins lay where nobody had dropped them last time. The hollow silence pinched at my senses, every nerve ending alive. "Look at this," I said, crouching beside a fresh smear of crimson across the wood planks. My flashlight beam revealed muddy drips leading toward the back wall. Herrera knelt beside me, muttering into his radio. "Unit 12, we're in. No people visible yet, but there's blood, probable animal or human. Continue with caution." I followed the drops to the central hole in the wall. It had been widened again, more than human hands could carve casually. Splinters and wood chips crunched under my fingers as I peered through the jagged gap. On the other side, the crawl tunnel was narrower than ever, the walls smeared with footprints. I hesitated, heart hammering. Memories of the last time I'd crawled through those boards flickered across my mind. The rush of panic, the sting of bone breaking under a gunshot, the thick taste of blood in my mouth. Herrera's voice came through the mic, steady but tight. "You checking it out?" I exhaled and slipped through the gap, hinging on my elbows. He followed, wedge of his shoulder against mine. The tunnel spat us out into the farmhouse corridor, dust motes dancing in our beams. The layout was the same, but the details had changed. Walls slashed, wallpaper peeled in new patterns, as if some deranged artist had redecorated in spree. Faded furniture was overturned, room by room. Each space felt like a stage set for terror. We cleared the first 2 rooms, empty, silent, until a low hum vibrated under our feet. I stilled, hand dropping to my holster. "You hear that?" I whispered. Herrera nodded, crouching by a broken door. Through the chasm, I heard it again, a soft, guttural chant, rhythmic and low, like a lullaby sung off-key by too many voices. It made the hairs on my neck stand on end. We edged into the 3rd room, the kitchen. Empty appliances littered the counters. Cabinets hung open, their contents dumped onto the floor. The chanting was louder here, as if emanating from the basement below. My radio crackled, dispatch checking our status, but I ignored it, straining to locate the sound. It was muffled, distorted, as if billions of dead insects were singing deep underground. Herrera shifted, flashlight riding with his gun. "I'm going down there. You cover me." He pointed at a hatch door in the pantry floor, original to the house. I steadied my breathing, dislodged my own gun and nodded. "Be careful." He lifted the latch and the door creaked open, revealing a shallow stairway descending into pitch. Yellow caution tape had been roped around it previously. Now it hung in tatters. Herrera turned on his headlamp and began the descent. I stood back, eyes on the doorway, ready for anything. Someone rushing up, or worse, the earth itself shifting beneath our feet. Halfway down, Herrera paused, whispering, It's a cellar. Come down." My gut nodded, but I slid through the opening and dropped to the bottom. He swung his beam around. The cellar was small, concrete walls slick with moisture. Half a dozen flickering candles sat on the floor, arranged in a rough circle. The hum was deafening here, the air pulsing in time with some invisible heart. In the center lay an assortment of charred papers, their edges curled in on themselves. I stepped forward, heart hammering so loud I could feel the vibration in my rib cage. My beam landed on the papers. Scribbled names, dates, and crossed-out words scrawled in an erratic hand. And at the very center a single page remained unburnt, taped to the wall. A photograph of my own face, eyes closed, mouth bloodied. The corner marked with a single word. "Return." I froze, staggering back. Herrera's beam swung to my face in alarm. "What is it?" he hissed. I held up the picture, my hand shaking so hard the edges fluttered in the candlelight. My name was printed at the bottom in a child's block letters, the ink smudged. "No way," I whispered. My gut plummeted. "They have my photo." The chanting ceased abruptly, replaced by an oppressive silence. The candles guttered, flame dancing in a rush of air that shouldn't exist underground. I felt cold fingers brush my spine. Herrera pinned me with his light. "We need to get out," he said, voice strained. But neither of us moved. The photograph burned a hole in my chest with its silent accusation. I recognized the handwriting. It matched the scrawl from the attic loft, the angry script behind the kid's drawings, the final line that read, "He never leaves." A sudden shudder rippled through the walls, as if the deserted house itself breathed. I stumbled backward into the circle of candles, knocking one over. The flame leapt across the oil-soaked floor, snapping at the papers. Herrera cursed and lunged to stamp it out, but the wind in the cellar surged unnaturally, fanning all the candles at once. Flames leapt higher, casting grotesque shadows that writhed on the walls. I yanked my flashlight to my face. The beam cut through the smoke and revealed something impossible. Figures standing at the edges of the circle. Pale outlines of children, their eyes hollow, mouths agape, as if they'd materialized from the swirling smoke. I recognized their shapes, the ones from the drawings in the attic, siblings trapped in a nightmare. They hovered just beyond the light's edge, faces turned toward me with a silent plea. I jerked, staggering back into Herrera, who knocked over another candle in haste. The flame scrawled toward the stacked papers, igniting them with a hiss. The chanting began again, low and triumphant, as if celebrating the culmination of a ritual. My heart hammered against my ribs, drowning out every thought but one. Get out. "Herrera, now!" I screamed. We barreled up the stairs, coughing on acrid smoke, each step slick with melted wax. The chanting followed us, echoing off the cellar walls within my skull, seeping into my bones. We burst through the hatch, yanked the door closed, and banged the remains of the staircase with our flashlights until the wood groaned and shifted, trapping the flames below. We staggered back into the kitchen corridor, gasping. The candle smoke trailed behind us like a tail of black smoke. My flashlight revealed the walls, freshly tagged with new scrawl. "You can never leave." The letters dripped as if painted in blood. We didn't wait to read more. Side by side, we sprinted the length of the corridor, burst through the crawl tunnel, and flung ourselves back into the barn's open maw. Outside, the night air hit like a wave, and we collapsed onto the ground in front of the broken wall. My lungs burned as I gulped air, eyes searching the darkness for any sign of pursuit. Herrera coughed beside me. "What the hell was that?" he gasped. I shook my head, words failing me. My mind reeled with the image of those ghostly children, the photo of my bloodied face, the fiery ritual in the cellar. This was no trespasser or frightened vagrant. This was something ancient, something that fed on fear and flesh and ritual. I pressed trembling fingers to my forehead, tasting ash and sweat. "I don't know," I rasped, "but it's not over." The barn stood silent, its broken skeleton gleaming under the moonlight, as if nothing had happened. My radio crackled, dispatch asking for a status update. I pressed the talk button, hand shaking so badly I almost dropped it. "Unit 12, we're clear." Checking for trespassers. Over. My voice sounded hollow in the static. Dispatch replied, "Copy. Stand by for backup." The barn seemed to inhale at my words, its rotten boards creaking in response. I glanced at Herrera. His face was pale, eyes wide, reflecting a fear deeper than any gunfire or ambush. "We're not done," he said, voice barely audible. I nodded, still staring at the barn. The blood on my uniform, my blood, the kids' blood, felt like a promise. This place would not release us. It would continue to call us back, each encounter more harrowing than the last. I rose unsteadily, glancing at the shattered window where I'd seen that Deputy Daniel's silhouette. The fog swirled at the barn's threshold, parting as if beckoning. My heart slammed against my chest. I felt the pull of those blank eyes, the small voices in my head whispering that I was the next sacrifice in this never-ending cycle. Herrera extended a hand. I took it, allowing him to help me to my feet. We limped toward the cruiser, leaving the barn behind for now. But I knew we would return, because midnight encounters demand witnesses, and we were the only ones left alive. As we drove away, the fog thinned behind us, revealing the faint outline of a figure standing in the barn's open doorway, tall, gaunt, uniform still crisp, and face obscured by shadow. I blinked, and it was gone. But a new word glowed on the barn wall in fresh crimson paint. "Stay." And in that moment I realized there is no leaving. What happens the next time I answer that call? If you're still here. I hope tonight's story helped you drift off, or at least kept you wondering. If you enjoyed it, leave a like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. And if you're already asleep, well, sweet dreams. This was Sleet Crime Stories. See you in the next case.